The day after that they would produce some strange tables and chairs. It could be said that half of Yanhuang College's work was done by the workshop. 3 days later, at Yanhuang College. Commander Yan. Commander Yan. Out of the water. Out of the water. Yan Xiaoning was sorting out the recent assessment results of various engineering teams in the office, when he heard Gu Xiaomao rushing in from outside while shouting. What's out of the water? Gu Xiaomao's words were very ambiguous, and Yan Xiaoning was dumbfounded. Huff, huff. Commander Yan, it's Master Liao and the others who dug out water in the east of the college. Gu Xiaomao bent over and panted heavily. Yan Xiaoning's eyes widened. He said in disbelief, How is that possible? It hasn't even been 3 days. How can they dig out water? Gu Xiaomao said anxiously, It's true. If you don't believe me, you can follow me to take a look. Xiaomao, bring me to take a look first. Yan Xiaoning nodded. After pressing some of the information on the table with an ink slab, he followed Gu Xiaomao out of the door. Not long after, they arrived at a flat ground in the east of the college. This place was filled with dense trees and was very cool. At this time, many people had gathered to watch the show. Yan Xiaoning took a step forward and saw a deep well. However, he couldn't see if there was water in it. Master Liao, I heard that you guys dug out water? Yan Xiaoning glanced at the excited old man beside him and asked aloud. How can it be fake? Zhang De, put down a rope and bring up a bucket of water. Prove to Commander Yan that we're not bragging. The old man showed off proudly and then instructed the tanned brawny man beside him. Yes, got it, Master Liao. The brawny man laughed and then threw a wooden bucket tied with a rope into the well. Then there was a plop sound. Although the bucket wasn't out yet, Yan Xiaoning no longer had any doubts at this moment. After the tanned brawny man brought out a bucket full of well water, everyone exclaimed. Yan Xiaoning cupped his hands and said to the old man, Master Liao is really capable. You can dig out a well in the Cloud Mountain in such a short time. I'm impressed. The old man grinned and waved his hand. It's nothing. It's nothing. We've agreed before. Yan Xiaoning smiled and said, Don't worry, Master Liao. We agreed on 10 strings of coins. You won't be short of a single cent. I just don't know if you can tell us how you know that water can be dug out from this position? The old man's face turned serious and said seriously, It's not that difficult. The branches and leaves here are luxuriant, clear, and smooth. Its momentum is slightly higher than that of the white tiger on the right peak. It echoes with the white tiger, circling left and right, protecting the Mingtang. It's like a green dragon emerging from the water. If you dig 5 feet down from here, there will definitely be water. The onlookers were so surprised that their jaws almost dropped. They never thought that a well-digging master would know feng shui. Did he have to be so professional? Yan Xiaoning was also shocked. He opened his mouth and asked after a while, Master Liao, you know feng shui too? The old man laughed and revealed his mouth full of teeth. Then, he said, Ha ha. When I was young, I was a Taoist priest in the Taoist temple for 7 to 8 years. Later, the Taoist temple was destroyed in the war, so I left the mountain. I only know a little about feng shui. Yan Xiaoning's mouth twitched slightly. A Taoist priest actually became a well digger. No matter how he thought about it, it didn't seem reliable. But no one expected that the combination of the two would have such a miraculous effect. Then, Master Liao, help me dig 3 more wells. The price is the same as before. Yan Xiaoning exhaled a few times and said. Yanhuang College covered a huge area. 1 well was definitely not enough. Yan Xiaoning didn't expect this old man to be so efficient at digging wells. He decided to let him dig a few more wells while he was at it. With that, the Yanhuang Academy was basically ready. All that was left was for the final push. Chapter 590. While the construction of Yanhuang College was in full swing, Li Zixuan was not idle either. In fact, he was very miserable. Sigh. This speed is not good. It's been almost half a month, and I've only written 2 textbooks. It's a bit difficult to continue at this speed. Li Mansion, West Courtyard, Study. Li Zixuan looked at the 2 textbooks, Mathematics, Volume 2, and Physics, Volume 1, on the table and sighed. If someone heard this sentence, they would definitely beat him up. One must know that compiling textbooks was a task that was done by a learned scholar. It would be good if he could compile 1 textbook in a year. But this guy had only compiled 2 in half a month, and he was still not satisfied. He wanted to go to heaven. However, Li Zixuan was not satisfied at all. The textbooks he wrote were all related subjects that he had learned in school in his previous life with abnormal mental strength. Naturally, others could not compete with him in terms of speed. But even so, Li Zixuan still felt that it was too slow because the academy would start in half a month. At first, he planned to open 4 courses for the students, but now there were still 2 textbooks that he had not written, chemistry and geography. Of course, the textbooks he wrote were not all mechanically copied. It was not that the first grade in Yanhuang College would learn what the first grade in the modern world learned. The 2 schools had different academic systems, which determined that the content of each stage of study was different. When he first wrote Mathematics, Volume 1, in Yanhuang College, the content in it already covered the first and second grade of primary school. But the students in the School of Mathematics had already learned almost half of the mathematics in Volume 1, so Li Zixuan wrote the mathematics in Volume 2. As for the 2 textbooks that were still missing, chemistry was not bad, but it would be very troublesome to teach because the chemical symbols in it were read according to the English alphabet in his previous life. But now, it was the Tang Dynasty. One could imagine the scene when the time came. Students, this is the chemical formula of water molecules, H2O H2O. Come, remember it well? 233, 3333. This scene was simply too beautiful to imagine. As for the geography textbook, Li Zixuan did not know where to start, because he did not know the current territory of Tang Dynasty. How could he make it up? Not to mention half a month, even if he was given half a year, he would not be able to make it up. However, he had no choice but to set up this course. Setting aside the issue of territory, there were many concepts in geography that were very useful. For example, the concept of scale in a map, the concept of up north and down south, the concept of left, west, right and east, the concept of latitude and longitude, contour lines, and so on. Ancient maps were not based on north and south, left, west and right. Many ancient maps of China adopted the setting of north and south, left, east and right. This might have something to do with the fact that the emperor sat in the north and faced the south. This was convenient for users to see, but there were also many ancient maps that used the setting of north and south. There was no uniform rule for this. As for latitude and longitude, no one in this era had defined the prime meridian. In modern times, the longitude that passes through the original site of the Greenwich Observatory in London, England is known as the 0-degree longitude, also known as the prime meridian. When he wrote the textbook, he could define the prime meridian as the longitude that a typical building in Chang'an passed through. In this way, hundreds or even thousands of years later, everyone would look at the map according to the latitude and longitude defined by Tang Dynasty. Besides these, the most important use of geography was to allow students to clearly understand the world, to let them know that the Great Tang only occupied a palm-sized piece of land on the world map. This would be extremely useful in the era of great voyages in the future. Sigh. How should I compile this geography textbook? Everything else is easy, but where should I go to find information about the mountains and rivers in Tang Dynasty? Li Zixuan rubbed his chin and fell into deep thought. Husband, are you still busy? This is the iced mung bean soup that I just made. Stop and have a taste. At this moment, the door was pushed open from the outside with a creak. Then, Han Yushi, who was wearing a thin white dress, walked in with a small bowl that was emitting cold air. When she saw Li Zixuan lying on the table and thinking hard, she couldn't help but feel a little sorry for him. "Oh, my wife is here." Li Zixuan came back to his senses, then stood up and looked at Han Yushi and said, "Heh? My wife, why are you wasting your energy on such a hot day? Look at how hot you are. Let the people below do this work. Come and sit." Han Yushi smiled and put the mung bean soup on the table. Then, she said unhappily, "Husband, you also know that it's a hot day now. Then why have you been locking yourself in the house every day recently? Mother and I are worried that you will get sick from being cooped up. I know that my husband is working hard on the matters of the academy, but you can't tire yourself out because of this." Li Zixuan's heart warmed. He stepped forward and grabbed Han Yushi's soft hands. He smiled and said, "Wife, don't worry. Your husband has martial arts. A mere hot day can't do anything to me. You just have to take care of yourself." Han Yushi rolled her eyes and said angrily, "Husband, you're lying again? Who said that people who have martial arts are not afraid of the heat? Lu Guogong, the old man, has already taken a few carts of ice cubes from our house. You still want to fool me?" Cough cough. This. Li Zixuan was suddenly speechless. Han Yushi was right. They practiced martial arts. Although they were not afraid of the cold, they were generally quite afraid of the heat, unless you practiced the rare Yin attribute internal strength. Han Yushi picked up the small bowl and stuffed it into Li Zixuan's hand. She said, "Okay. I know that my husband is busy, but you should drink this bowl of mung bean soup first." How could Li Zixuan disagree? He quickly nodded and replied, "Okay, okay, okay. I'll drink it now." After saying that, he gulped down the bowl of mung bean soup in one gulp like a cow drinking water. A wave of unbridled coolness instantly erupted from within him, and he couldn't help but exclaim, "Refreshing." Han Yushi smiled and put away the bowl. Then, she turned around and prepared to go out. However, she paused at the door and hesitated. "My husband seems to have encountered some difficulties. My ability is limited, so I'm afraid I can't help much. However, my husband can go out for a walk and relax. Don't you have so many friends? You can ask them for help. There's no need to build a cart behind closed doors. I've been relying on the help of many people since I was young. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to marry my husband." After hearing this, Li Zixuan was silent for a while. Suddenly, he laughed and said, "I got it. Haha. Wife, you're really my lucky star." The most important point was that Li Tai had once presided over the compilation of the famous book Jiao Diji in the original history book. The book was divided into 358 states according to the 10 paths of Xinguan. Then, with each state as a unit, it described the history, geography, names, mountains, cities, historical sites, myths, legends, and major historical events of each county. The extensive collection preserved many precious information from the geography books of the 6 dynasties, which had a deep impact on the later generations. Therefore, it was more than appropriate to get this little fatty to help write the geography teaching materials. Moreover, Li Tai had a literature center in his hands. Everyone there was a knowledgeable scholar. With these resources, it was simply half the work and twice the result. At that moment, Li Tai was puzzled and asked, "Geography? Deputy editor? I definitely can't do that." Li Zixuan smiled and said, "Geography is similar to Shangshu Yugong and the classic of mountains and seas, but there are some new concepts added in it. You just need to be responsible for completing the part about the Tang Empire." The classic of mountains and seas was written in the pre-Qin Dynasty, and Shangshu Yugong was written in the Warring States period. This was considered the earliest famous geography book in our country. The author of Shangshu Yugong used geography as the basis for his ideal political division. He divided the world into 9 states, namely Ji, Yan, Qing, Su, Yang, Jing, Yu, Liang, and Yong. He also recorded all kinds of geographical phenomena in the country. It was a model of early regional geography research in China. It was cited in commentary on the Classic of Water, maps of Yuanhe County, and many other geographical works since the Tang and Song dynasties. Oh, so it's this. But doesn't Yen Huang College teach engineering? Why are you teaching geography now? Can't I? The college is mine. I can teach whatever I want. You. That hand is on me. If I don't want to, then I won't. Li Zixuan was already prepared for this little fatty's character. He smiled and said, "Are you sure? There are many benefits to being a compiler." What benefits can there be? Li Tai couldn't help but ask. Li Zixuan stretched out 3 fingers and said with a smile, "For example, in the first month of school, I'll allow you to take 3 days off. Take note, in the first month of school, I plan to let all the students undergo intensive training. Those days will be unbearable. TSK. Chinke, you have to think about it." Li Tai felt Li Zixuan's devilish smile and couldn't help but feel his scalp tingle. He paused and said, "Only 3 days? No way. It has to be 5 days." Li Zixuan snorted and said, "3 days means 3 days. If you don't want to do it, I'll find someone else. 3 days is already the limit of my tolerance." Li Zixuan knew very well that when dealing with people like this little fatty, he couldn't give in at all. Otherwise, this guy would definitely take advantage of him. Sure enough, Li Tai saw that Li Zixuan wasn't willing to budge. After hesitating for a while, he gritted his teeth and said, "Fine. 3 days it is. Tell me, how should we compile this geography textbook?" Li Zixuan shook his head and said, "You don't have to worry about this first. When you go back, gather all the scholars in your mansion to help you collect all the mountains and rivers in the Tang Empire. Then, about 7 days later, I'll send you a book. In this book, except for the part about the Tang Empire that has problems, the rest of the book and all the concepts in the book are all correct. When the time comes, you just need to make some adjustments on this foundation." This was also the most reasonable method that Li Zixuan came up with at the moment. First, make a complete copy of the modern geography book, then deduct the domestic part and give it to Li Tai to fill in. He believed that with this little fatty's understanding and ability, he could complete the whole book. Li Tai nodded thoughtfully and said, "Okay. Then I'll go back to the mansion to gather people. When your masterpiece comes, we'll start." "That's great." Chapter 592. After the little fatty left, Li Zixuan began another round of closed-door training. In the blink of an eye, another 7 days had passed. It was now September. In these 7 days, the renovations of the buildings that were previously completed in Yen Huang College had been completed. There were doors, windows, blackboards, tables, chairs, and lecterns in the classrooms. There were bunk beds, windows, and candlesticks in the dormitories. There were also small windows in the cafeteria that were similar to modern school cafeterias. There were also rows of neatly arranged tables and chairs. There were also rows of showerheads in the bathhouse. The current appearance of Yen Huang College was infinitely similar to that of a modern university. Other than the lack of electrical, multimedia, and other high-tech equipment, the gap between the two was getting smaller and smaller. From this point of view, Li Zixuan had spent a lot of money to buy a feeling of modernity. If a modern person were to transmigrate and see Yen Huang College, they would definitely think that they had transmigrated back. It was a pity that Li Zixuan had been busy compiling the teaching materials and did not see this scene at the first moment. "Feiji, send this book to the Prince of Wei's residence now. You must deliver it personally. Do not lose it on the way." In the Li residence, Li Zixuan walked out of the west courtyard with a haggard expression. He handed a book to Pang Feiji and solemnly instructed him. Of the 4 teaching materials, the one that required the most effort was undoubtedly geography. Other than the names of various places that needed to be corrected, there were also many maps. It was very troublesome to draw. Even with Li Zixuan's abnormal mental strength, he was still somewhat exhausted after so many days of work. If not for the fact that this college was the foundation for his family to establish themselves in the Tang Dynasty, he would not have worked so hard even if he was given a mountain of gold and silver. Speaking of which, when the geography was printed in the future, the workshop would have to spend a lot of effort. This was because the text could be directly printed with movable type. However, the maps and the like would have to be carved by a master carver before they could be printed. The cost of this would be much higher. Yes, Lord Zhu. Seeing Li Zixuan's serious expression, Pang Feiji knew that this book was very important. He put the book into his pocket and cupped his fists towards Li Zixuan. And go. Li Zixuan rubbed his forehead and waved his hand. Logically speaking, he had spent so much effort on this book. Of course, he attached great importance to it. If it weren't for the fact that he was too tired, he would have gone there personally. However, when Pang Feiji was handling things, he was very assured. At least, Brother Chicken had never made any mistakes. Pang Feiji brought the plain-looking textbook out of Li Zixuan's house. Other than feeling a little reluctant to give away the textbook that he had worked so hard to write, he did not really care about anything else. What he didn't know was that the book he didn't care about had caused a huge commotion in the imperial court. Ha ha ha. Little Xian. I heard that you've been staying at home recently. Are you practicing martial arts in seclusion again? Li Zixuan was about to return to the west courtyard to rest when he heard a hearty laugh from outside. Then, he saw the two brothers, Dugu Xian and Dugu Feiying, walking in from outside. The person who had spoken just now was Dugu Feiying. Li Zixuan felt that something was wrong. He squinted his eyes and looked at the two brothers for a while. He was a little surprised and said, "Ah Xian, you've entered the master stage?" The reason why he felt that something was wrong was because when the two of them came in, he could feel a strong aura rushing towards him. In the past, the two brothers would definitely not have such an aura. Then, he took a closer look and realized where the problem was. Dugu Xian had broken through. In just over a month, this guy had actually entered the master stage from the late stage of qi cultivation. How could he not be surprised? Dugu Xian nodded and walked over. He bowed deeply to Li Zixuan and said, "Thanks to you, little Xian. This is all thanks to you, little Xian, for helping me deduce the first three forms of the 9 swords beyond the sword. Otherwise, I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to reach the Grandmaster realm in my lifetime. I, Dugu Xian, will never forget your kindness. In the future, if you need anything, I'll do my best." Yes, including me. Dugu Feiying also chimed in. Li Zixuan was stunned and said in disbelief, 9 swords of Dugu? Xian, did you break through from the 9 swords of Dugu? Dugu Xian nodded and said, "Yes. But I only helped you deduce the first 3 sword moves. How can you comprehend with only 3 sword moves?" Speaking of this, Dugu Xian's expression became slightly excited. "After I brought the 3 sword moves that you deduced back home, I practiced them a few times at first and found that they were extremely unfamiliar. Later on, I realized that this 9 swords beyond the swords could actually resonate with our Dugu family's solitary wind swordsmanship, so I tried to combine the two. Unexpectedly, I actually comprehended the last 2 moves of the 9 swords beyond the whip move and the rope move. Then, I asked for leave from His Majesty and temporarily left the affairs of the Northern Yamen Imperial Army to focus on breaking through. In the end, hard work paid off. With the first 5 moves of the 9 swords of Dugu and the solitary wind sword technique, I broke through to the master stage 3 days ago." Li Zixuan raised his eyebrows. He didn't expect Dugu Xian to have such a fortuitous encounter. He also didn't expect that the 9 swords of Dugu, a sword technique that only existed in novels, could actually resonate with the Dugu family's solitary wind sword technique. This was a little unbelievable. Also, it was no wonder that when Cui Yunhan brought the scholar to the Li residence to cause trouble, the commander of the imperial army sent by Second Li wasn't Dugu Xian, but a small soldier in the imperial army, Sun Jiping. Sun Jiping also said that Dugu Xian had taken a leave of absence for a while. He didn't expect that he had taken a leave of absence to go home and cultivate in seclusion. Haha. Congratulations on breaking through to the master stage, Xian. Looks like our Tang Empire will have another young tiger. After a moment of shock, he congratulated Dugu Xian from the bottom of his heart. He and Dugu Xian were friends who had gone through life and death together. For Dugu Xian to have such a fortuitous encounter, he would only be happy for him and would definitely not be jealous. Moreover, his 9 swords of Taishin was not inferior to the 9 swords of Dugu at all, so there was nothing to envy others. Dugu Xian shook his head and said, "This is mainly due to your help, Xiao Xian. Moreover, compared to a 14-year-old master like you, mine is nothing." According to age, Dugu Xian was 27 or 28 years old this year. However, as long as he didn't compare himself to Li Zixuan, this monster, he could still be considered as one of the youngest people to break through to the master stage. Li Zixuan smiled and said, "No matter what, this is something worth celebrating. When we have time in the future, let's call Cho Ox and the others and have a good drink." Chapter 593. Little Xian, after my father found out that you were the one who gave me such a peerless sword technique like the 9 swords of Dugu, he was very grateful to you and wanted to thank you in person. He specially prepared some wine in his residence and sent us 2 brothers to invite you to his residence for a chat. I wonder if it's convenient for you? Li Residence, Front Hall. After Li Zixuan invited the Dugu brothers to take a seat in the front hall, Dugu Xian explained the purpose of his visit. Li Zixuan's hand that was holding the cup of water paused for a moment. He hesitated and said, "The 9 strategies beyond the swords was just an act of my heart. I didn't think that it could help Xian break through the realm by accident. This is completely your own good fortune. I don't dare to take credit for it. I'm very happy to accept your father's invitation, but I've been busy with the Academy's teaching materials recently and can't leave. So, let's meet another day. I hope your father will forgive me for my rudeness." Whether it was in ancient times or modern times, it was very rude to refuse an elder's invitation. What's more, Li Zixuan was rejecting the head of a powerful family. If it wasn't for the fact that he really couldn't get away, he wouldn't have done this. Dugu Xian came to a sudden realization. He glanced at Li Zixuan and said, "No wonder I heard that you've been cooped up in the manor recently, little Xian. So it's because of your Yen Wang College. It's okay. Your academy matters more. My father definitely won't blame you." Dugu Xian knew quite a bit about Yen Wang College. First of all, Li Zixuan had put a lot of effort into this college. Secondly, Li Zixuan also had high hopes for this college. Therefore, after hearing Li Zixuan's reason, he understood quite well. Li Zixuan smiled and said, "Thank you for your understanding. When I'm free in the future, I'll definitely pay your father a visit in person." Dugu Xian nodded and got up to leave. Suddenly, he seemed to have thought of God. He stopped in his tracks and pulled out a small booklet with a blue cover. He handed it to Li Zixuan and said, "Li Zixuan. Xiao Xian, this is our Dugu clan's solitary wind sword technique. Take it." Li Zixuan was stunned. Isn't this lonely wind sword technique your Dugu family's heirloom sword technique? Why are you giving it to me?" Dugu Xian nodded. "The solitary wind swordsmanship is indeed our family's swordsmanship. Logically speaking, it should not be passed to outsiders. However, you did not hesitate to pass the 9 swords beyond the swordsmanship to me. Without a doubt, the 9 swords beyond the swordsmanship is a better and more exquisite swordsmanship than the solitary wind swordsmanship. The solitary wind swordsmanship is almost equivalent to the introduction to the 9 swords beyond the swordsmanship. The solitary wind swordsmanship is almost equivalent to the introduction to the 9 swords beyond the swordsmanship. After obtaining the 9 swords beyond the swordsmanship, our Dugu family owes you a big favor. Therefore, my father has decided to give the solitary wind swordsmanship to you. When Li Zishuan heard this, his heart palpitated with eagerness, but he still refused. No. This is too valuable. I can't accept it. Dugu Xian did not take the sword manual back. Instead, he insisted, you must accept this. Previously, you were able to deduce the 3 sword moves of solitary 9 swords without practicing the foundation of solitary wind swordsmanship. This means that your talent in swordsmanship is far higher than mine. Now that the facts have proven that the solitary wind sword technique is helpful in comprehending the 9 swords of Dugu, Xiao Xian, you must try to practice it. Who knows, you might be able to deduce all 9 sword moves of the 9 swords of Dugu. Seeing Li Zishuan's hesitation, Dugu Feiying chimed in, that's right. Little Xian, this is my father's wish, quickly accept it. At most, you can wait until you have deduced all the 9 strategies beyond the swords, then share your insights with my big brother. Dugu Xian's expression changed, and he immediately interrupted, Flying Eagle, shut up. Exchanging the first 5 moves of the solitary wind swordsmanship for the solitary wind swordsmanship is already a bargain for us. How can we be greedy for other things? Dugu Feiying smiled embarrassedly. Actually, he was just trying to persuade Li Zishuan to accept the lonely wind swordsmanship. He didn't have any bad intentions. Li Zishuan hurriedly waved his hand and said, Don't. Xian, why are you still being so polite with me? Feiying is right. How about this? I will accept this solitary wind swordsmanship, and I will definitely not teach it to outsiders. If I can comprehend all the sword moves of the 9 swords of Dugu in the future, I will share them with you. Absolutely not. This way, won't I owe you more and more? Li Zishuan laughed. It's fine, it's fine. There's nothing between us brothers that we owe each other. Xian, aren't you treating me like an outsider? Dugu Xian said helplessly, All right then. It's getting late, we'll take our leave first. Li Zishuan nodded and personally sent the 2 of them out. Before Dugu Feiying left, he said, Xiao Xian, does your academy teach martial arts? If it does, I'll enroll in it later. Teach martial arts? Well, it's not like it's impossible. After sending the 2 brothers off, Li Zishuan rubbed his chin and thought to himself, Who said that the academy can only teach knowledge? Cultivating both literature and martial arts is not bad. Sigh. No. This bunch of kids are already fixed in their bones. It's too troublesome to teach them. This kind of unreliable thought came and went quickly. After a while, Li Zishuan threw it to the back of his mind and turned his attention to the manual of the solitary wind swordsmanship. F***ck. There's a mountain of treasures in the air, but I can't go in to see it. School was about to start soon, and he had to finish the last textbook, chemistry. He had no time to study swordsmanship. After stuffing the manual into the bookshelf, Li Zishuan bitterly became a porter again, a porter of knowledge. Ganlu Hall. Li Er put down his brush and leaned on the couch. After a while, he suddenly asked, What has Li Zishuan been doing recently? Why haven't I heard anything about him? Ever since Li Zishuan returned at the beginning of the year, he had been stirring up trouble in Chang'an City. Recently, he had suddenly been quiet for so long that Li Er was not used to it. That was why he asked this question. Zhao Song stepped forward and said, Your Majesty, Li Xianan has been in his residence recently. He should be busy with Yanhuang College. However, 7 days ago, Li Xianan personally went to Yunshan and brought His Highness Prince Wei back to Chang'an from the mountain. After hearing this, Li Er was puzzled and asked, Qingke? How could he bear to come back from there? What is he doing now? Zhao Song replied, I don't know. Ever since His Highness Prince Wei returned, he has been in his residence. I don't know what His Highness is busy with. However, there have been many scholars coming in and out of the Prince Wei's residence recently. Li Er said curiously, Hey? All of them are not coming out? Zhao Song, let Qingke enter the palace to see me later. After returning to Chang'an for so long, I haven't seen this child enter the palace to greet his mother. This is outrageous. Zhao Song bowed and said, Yes. Chapter 594. Prince Wei's Mansion, Literature Hall. There were a dozen or so middle-aged scholars shuttling back and forth among the mountains of books. They were either reading ancient books, discussing with each other in low voices, or flipping through the books while taking note. The room was filled with a dense aura of books. It had to be said that Li Tai's literature library had a large collection of books. There were at least 10,000 volumes, which was almost equivalent to a small-scale library. And what was Li Tai doing? This little fatty was currently hugging a book, immersed in reading at a table near the window. His expression was sometimes shocked, sometimes intoxicated, as if there was a peerless beauty in the book. Ah Pui, there should be a table full of peerless delicacies, causing him to be deeply immersed, unable to extricate himself. Ahem, to the current Li Tai, beauty was far less attractive than delicacies. Your Highness! At this moment, a gray-robed scholar walked in from outside. He came to Li Tai's side and called out softly. There was only silence in response. Li Tai still sat there without moving. He didn't even look up. It seemed like he didn't hear him at all. The gray-robed scholar had no choice but to increase his volume and continue calling out, Your Highness! Your Highness! However, he muttered in his heart, ever since Prince Wei entered the Imperial College to study, he has never studied so seriously like now. What's wrong with him today? It's really strange. Li Tai finally noticed that someone was calling him. He raised his head and looked at the person. A trace of apology immediately appeared on his face. He stood up and said, Ahem. This prince obtained a new book and was fascinated by it. Scholar Xiao, what's the matter? The gray-robed scholar in front of him was called Xiao Dian. He was a scholar of the Hongwen Library and was born in an official's family. His father and grandfather were high-ranking officials of the Qin Kingdom during the Southern Dynasty. During the Wuda era, they served as the Eastern Palace's subordinate, the crown prince, and washed his horse. This person belonged to the kind of person who spent his life pursuing the truth of knowledge. He was not interested in fame, fortune, or official struggles. My ambition is to study from day to night without rest. Every time you want to open the 5 classics, you have to tie your belt, wash your hands, and sit still. If history developed according to the normal trajectory, in a few years, Xiao Dian would become one of the main contributors to Li Tai's Quodiji. Your Highness! His Majesty just sent someone to pass on a message, saying that he wants you to make a trip to the palace. Of course, Xiao Dian wouldn't get angry with a child like Li Tai. Seeing that Li Tai had returned to his senses, he hurriedly replied, Oh, I'll go now. Li Tai reluctantly closed the book, tidied his clothes, and left. As for the book, of course, he couldn't carry it around with him. Instead, he left it on the table. The literature hall was his. What was there to worry about if he put his book in there? What book is this? This old man has read all the books in the literature hall. Why have I never seen this book before? After Li Tai left, Xiao Dian was about to turn around and busy himself with his own matters. However, he was suddenly attracted by the book on the table that Li Tai had just closed and didn't have a single word on the cover. He stood in front of the table and muttered to himself, This son pays his respects to father. In the Sweet Dew Hall, the rotund Li Tai walked in with small steps and bowed to Li Er. His appearance looked rather comical. No wonder Li Er had always doted on this son. Qingke is here? Rise. Li Er raised his head when he heard the voice and smiled. Li Tai straightened his body and cupped his hands. Thank you, father? Li Er smiled, then put down the memorial in his hand that he was reading halfway and asked, I heard that you haven't been to Yunshan for the past few days, Qingke? Replying to father, that's indeed the case. Since that's the case, why are you still in a hurry these past few days? I don't see you entering the palace to pay your respects to me and your mother? Li Er frowned and asked in a deep voice. Previously, after Li Tai went to Yunshan to help build the academy, Empress Zhongsun felt sorry for her son's tiredness from running back and forth every day. Thus, she exempted Li Tai from entering the palace to pay his respects every day. Now that Li Tai had returned from Yunshan for some unknown reason, he still hadn't entered the palace to pay his respects. This made Li Er a little unhappy. He could tolerate his son's lack of aptitude, but he couldn't tolerate them being disloyal and unfilial. Li Tai's fat face turned red. To be honest, he hadn't entered the palace to pay his respects for a long time and had forgotten about this. Of course, this was something that he couldn't say out loud. He had a legitimate reason. This is indeed this son's negligence. This son will go and pay his respects to mother later. This son has been too busy these past few days and has become muddle-headed. I hope father can forgive me. Muddle-headed from being too busy? What are you busy with? Replying to father, it's some studies that teacher has given to this son. Yanhuang College is about to start school. Teacher Li has been compiling textbooks behind closed doors for the past month. From what I heard, this son seems to be planning to open 4 courses for the new students. They are mathematics, physics, chemistry, and geography. About 7 days ago, Mr. Li brought me back from Yunshan Mountain because he wanted me to participate in the compilation of the geography teaching materials. Thus, this son has been collecting ancient books and literature with the scholars in the literature hall for reference. Li Er's face cleared up a little when he heard this. He frowned and pondered for a long time. Then, he stood up and asked, Geography? Isn't he teaching engineering? Why is he teaching geography for no reason? Does this kid really think that he's Zhuge Kongming who knows everything from astronomy to geography? When Li Tai heard this, he looked slightly excited and said, Father is wise. Teacher Li really knows geography? This morning, teacher sent the first draft of the geography textbook to this son's residence. This son opened it and was deeply immersed in it. I couldn't extricate myself. I didn't even eat lunch. Latitude and longitude, contour lines, sea level, and so on. Teacher put forward some new concepts in the book. It made this son feel as if he opened up a new world. This geography textbook is definitely better than any of the classics in the past. Li Er was slightly moved. No one knew a son better than his father. Li Tai had always been arrogant. A book that could make him praise it so much must be extraordinary. Latitude and longitude, contour lines, sea level? What are all these things? Li Tai cupped his hands and said, Father, this latitude and longitude is a set of data that teacher specified for each place on the map. It's convenient to find the location on the map. Contour lines are curves that distinguish the height of the terrain on the map. The sea level is the average height of the sea. This is used as a reference for the height of the terrain on the ground. Li Er frowned when he heard this. He didn't understand a single word that Li Tai said. Thus, he frowned and said, Where is that geography textbook now? I want to see how magical it is. Chapter 595. The geography textbook that Li Arian wanted to read was currently being observed by several scholars. The earth under our feet is actually spherical? How is this possible? Li Tai already knew that the earth was spherical, so he wasn't surprised at all when he saw these things. At first, Xiao Dian didn't suppress his curiosity and quietly opened the book that Li Tai left behind. When he saw the first page, he couldn't help but exclaim. This inexplicable exclamation also attracted the attention of the 2 scholars beside him. However, Xiao Dian couldn't care about this at this moment. He had already put all his attention into the book. He wanted to find out the truth. The first chapter of the geography textbook compiled by Li Zixuan talked about the Earth and map. After saying that the Earth was spherical, Li Zixuan gave some evidence that could be given under the conditions of this era to prove that the Earth was spherical. After Xiao Dian finished reading, he felt as if he had been struck by lightning. His head was buzzing. He originally wanted to refute the point of view in this book, but after reading this small chapter, he could no longer refute it. However, he found it hard to accept that the Earth was spherical for a moment. Oh my God! The Earth under our feet is so big. The Tang Empire only occupies such a small area. There are so many countries in the north, west, and south of the Tang Empire. 70% of the Earth's surface is ocean, and 30% is land? How is this possible? The meridian from the south to the north that passes through the Taiji Palace is called the prime meridian or the 0-degree meridian. From the 0-degree meridian to the east and west, it increases to 180 degrees. From the equator, 0-degree latitude, to the north and south poles, it increases to 90 degrees. It divides the Earth, and each part corresponds to a latitude and longitude. Who wrote this book? Who proposed the longitude and latitude? It's too bold. He wants to use the Tang Empire as a reference to divide the world. This idea, this boldness, it's simply amazing. At first, only 2 people were attracted, but when they saw the wonderful parts of the book, the 3 people exclaimed again and again. Finally, all the scholars in the room were attracted. Gradually, as time went by, the people in the room were all shocked by the spirit of pointing at the sky and drawing the Earth. No one had ever told them that the Earth was round, no one had ever told them how big the Earth was, and no one had ever told them how big the Earth was or how many oceans and lands there were, and no one had ever divided the Earth by latitude and longitude. Just by reading the first chapter of the book, these grand scholars felt that their worldview had been completely overturned, and they were still in a state of confusion. Scholar Xiao, His Majesty has sent someone here. He said that he wants to help Prince Wei take away the geography textbook that he was reading earlier. Just when everyone was shocked to the point of being speechless, a manservant walked in from outside and cupped his hands at Xiao Dian. Seeing that an outsider came in, to escape from the Tang Empire, to escape from the Tang Empire, escape from the Tang Empire, Tang Empire was to the Tang Empire to the Tang Empire to read the book. After all, this book was Li Tai's private book. It was against the rules for them to read it without permission. Xiao Dian's face turned red. He stood up and looked at the servant and asked, "Geography teaching material? What geography teaching material? Did His Highness say it clearly?" Although the servant felt that the atmosphere in the room was strange, he did not dare to raise any questions. He directly answered, "His Highness said that it was the book that he read earlier." Xiao Dian suddenly understood. He picked up the book on the table and looked at it. He reluctantly handed it over and said, "Then it's this book. Take it and give it to the person sent by His Majesty." "Yes." The servant took it solemnly and then left. Everyone in the room looked at each other. Xiao Dian sighed and said, "So this book is called Geography? It's really a peerless book." Another scholar also sighed and said, "Yes. Let's not talk about whether the things in this book are correct or not. The person who can come up with these ideas is definitely a peerless genius. Just this courage and boldness is something that this old man can't compare to." Xiao Dian nodded in agreement and said, "Brother Xie's words are reasonable. I just don't know who wrote this book. How did it appear in the literature hall out of thin air?" This brother Xie was Xie Yan. He was also a scholar in Li Tai's literature hall. He was also one of the people who would revise and write Ji in the future. Xie Yan replied, "This book seems to have been sent to His Highness Prince of Wei by someone in the morning. After His Highness Prince of Wei received the book, he has been reading it. He didn't even eat lunch." Xiao Dian frowned and said, His Highness said that this book is a geography teaching material. What kind of literature hall would use this kind of teaching material? I have never heard of this before. Xie Yan thought for a while and suddenly shouted in shock, Yanhuang College? Only a strange existence like Yanhuang College would use such a strange teaching material. Also, His Highness asked us to search for the past few days. It's very likely that it has something to do with this geography teaching material. When Xiaodian heard this, he agreed and said, Brother Xie's analysis is right. If that's the case, then the person who wrote this book can only be, pointing to the sky and drawing the earth, dividing the world. This kid is really bold. Not bad, not bad. In the Sweet Dew Hall, Li Er received the geography book from Prince of Wei's residence. After reading it for half an hour, he clapped his hands and laughed. The reason why he said it was not bad was mainly because Li Zishuan defined the zero meridian as the meridian that passed through Taiji Palace. This made Li Er, who valued the holy name, very proud and satisfied. As for the theory that the earth was spherical, Li Tai had introduced it to him before. Now that he saw it written in the book, he wasn't too surprised. Is this a world map? Why does my Tang Empire only occupy such a small area? And why are there so many gaps in my Tang Empire's territory? Casually flipping through the teaching material, a large map instantly attracted Li Er's attention. After looking at it carefully for a while, Li Er raised his head and frowned. Li Tai coughed and explained, Father, although the Tang Empire has a vast territory, it's really only so big on Earth. As for why there are gaps, it's because Mr. Li doesn't know much about our Tang Empire's mountains, rivers, provinces, and counties, so he handed the task of perfecting this book to me. After receiving the book today, I'm planning to start perfecting it. Li Er nodded and stared at the map for a long time. Then, he raised his head and an indescribable expression flashed in his eyes. He said to Li Tai, Good. Then, Qingke, you can go back. You must pay attention to the perfection of this book. Chapter 596. Scholar Xiao, Scholar Xie, you guys haven't left yet? Li Tai hugged the geography book. When he came back from the palace, he saw that no one was missing in the literature hall. He couldn't help but be surprised. When Li Er called him to the palace, it was already very late. At this time, the sky would probably turn dark in a while, so Li Tai was surprised. Xiao Dian went forward and chuckled, We were all waiting for your highness to come back. May I ask your highness, why is his majesty looking for you? Under normal circumstances, Xiao Dian definitely wouldn't ask such an unruly question. But today, he was already stunned by the views in the geography book. Moreover, Li Er specially sent people to retrieve the geography book. This meant that Li Er looking for Li Tai today definitely had something to do with geography. He really wanted to know what Li Er thought of this book. Li Tai was startled. Although he felt that Xiao Dian's question was very impolite, he still answered, And? It's nothing big. This prince had already planned to do this long ago. It doesn't matter if Father Emperor sends a mission or not. Oh, damn. Speaking until here, Li Tai seemed to have suddenly thought of something. He slapped his head and said with regret, AI? After getting the book in the morning, I was too engrossed in it and actually forgot to tell everyone about proper business. AI. It shouldn't be. What proper business? Xiao Dian, Xie Yan, and the others asked in unison. Li Tai took out the book from his chest and said, This book is called Geography. It's Yanhuang College's teaching material. This morning, Mr. Li asked someone to send it to this prince. This teaching material was compiled by him, but there are some missing contents and needs to be supplemented. This is the reason why this prince gathered everyone to help collect the mountain and river records. AI. This prince has accidentally wasted another day. Xiao Dian's eyes lit up, and he said somewhat excitedly, Does your highness mean that you want us to help perfect this geography book? Xiao Dian had already guessed who the author of this book was, so he was not surprised at all. But now, he was suddenly interested in the task that Li Tai was going to assign to them. To Xiao Dian, who had been pursuing knowledge and truth all his life, it was simply too blissful to have the opportunity to participate in the compilation of such a peerless book. Li Tai nodded and replied, Scholar Xiao is right. That is exactly what I meant. Next, I will have to trouble you all. My imperial father is also very concerned about this matter. Therefore, from tomorrow onwards, everyone will start to improve the contents of this book. We must hand over a complete textbook of geography within 7 days. When the time comes, I will reward you handsomely. When the scholars heard this, some frowned and some rejoiced. Xiao Dian thought for a while and asked, Your Highness, isn't 7 days a little short? Li Tai spread his hands helplessly and said, That can't be helped. Yanwang College will start school in half a month, so we must complete it as soon as possible. This prince will work hard with everyone in these few days. What's more, Mr. Li only spent 7 days to complete 90% of the book's content. With so many of us, can't we complete the remaining 10% of the book in 7 days? Ah, only 7 days? This? When Xiao Dian heard this, he couldn't help but be flabbergasted. He never would have thought that the book that overturned his worldview was actually written by a single person in just 7 days. This directly made him doubt his life. The rest of the scholars were not much better. Their eyes were even bigger than Qing Yaojin's eyes. Since ancient times, scholars despised each other. As the saying goes, there is no first place in literature, and there is no second place in martial arts. Among scholars, no one was willing to submit to anyone. But at this moment, when they heard from Li Tai about Li Zixuan's abnormal speed, who would dare to say that they were unconvinced? Your Highness, rest assured, this old man will do his best. Although Li Zixuan's abnormal speed left many of them in the dust, Li Tai's last sentence still aroused Xiao Dian's competitive spirit in his heart. He cupped his hands and said in a deep voice, Your Highness, rest assured, we will do our best. When the rest of the scholars saw this, they also cupped their hands and said. Li Tai laughed loudly and said, Ha ha, good. This prince will also do his best with everyone. Why is Erlang so energetic today? Late at night, in Empress Zhangxuan's bedroom, the candlelight was still swaying in the room. There were some faint sounds that were not suitable for children, which made the little palace maid guarding outside the door blush. For a long time it was calm. The 2 palace maids could not help but look at each other, and they both breathed a sigh of relief. Inside the room, Empress Zhangxun lay in Li Er's arms and said lazily. Li Er heard this and laughed. He put his head less than an inch away from Zhangxuan's face and said meaningfully, listening to Guanin's words, It seems that she is complaining that I only come here once every day? Then I will be like today every time in the future, how about that? There were 4 great joys in life. Rain after a long drought, meeting an old friend in a foreign land, the wedding night, and being nominated for the imperial role. Although they had been husband and wife for many years, the relationship between Li Er and Empress Zhangxun belonged to the type of aged wine. The longer it was, the more mellow. Therefore, after a certain someone got married twice, he was in a very good mood. Empress Zhangxun symbolically punched Li Er's chest and said angrily, Erlang, you are not serious again. I am asking you seriously. I feel that Erlang is a little unusual today. Li Er laughed loudly and then said, Maid Guanin, you know me? Ha. That's right. My heart is full of fighting spirit today. Empress Zhangxun asked curiously, Oh? Why? Li Er turned sideways and hugged Empress Zhangxun completely in his arms. He patted Empress Zhangxuan's jade back and sighed deeply. After the Wei River Alliance, the whole Tang Empire is hoarding provisions and preparing the soldiers and horses. Seeing the Tang Empire's national strength gradually increasing, while I am gratified, I also can't help but feel a little lonely. I am thinking that my Tang Empire is full of talents and fierce generals. According to this trend, in less than 2 years, the Turks will be destroyed. At that time, who can be my opponent? Haha. I didn't expect that child Qinke to give me something today that actually untied the knot in my heart. Maid Guanyin, guess what it is? Empress Zhongsun looked at the man beside her, who was smiling from the bottom of his heart, and suddenly felt very happy. She shook her head and said, I can't guess. Erlang, tell me. Li Er smiled and said, Haha. It is a map, a world map. I only found out today that my Tang Empire's vast territory is not even the size of a palm on the world map. I only found out today that other than the Turks, Tibetans and Xinlua, there are so many countries and so many powerful opponents on the aristocratic families. Chapter 597. To the west of the Tang Empire, there's a country bigger than the Tang Empire called the Arab Empire. Further west, there's a big country called the Byzantine Empire. Haha. This world is really interesting. I have to ask Li Zishuan about the strength of these two countries. Speaking of the source of his excitement, Li Er couldn't help but laugh proudly. Zhang Sun wasn't stupid. After listening for such a long time, she had long understood that the man beside her had the competitive spirit again tonight. However, she had never heard of the Arabian Empire and the Byzantine Empire. Therefore, she asked softly, Erlang, is this world map accurate or not? How does that kid Xiaoxian know about those countries in the far west? Li Er was stunned and replied, the map should be accurate? That kid is preparing to use this as a teaching material for Yanhuang College in the future. How can he teach something that isn't accurate to the students? As for how he knows about those countries, that's hard to say. This kid has too many doubts, so this one won't make a difference. As long as his heart is with the Tang Empire, I'll turn a blind eye. Empress Zhongsun nodded. After a moment of silence, she suddenly said, Oh right, Erlang. Speaking of Yanhuang College, I heard from my subordinates that many houses on Yunshan Mountain have been completed. In Xiaoshuan's college, the architectural style is not only strange, but also extremely luxurious. Yunshan Mountain used to be cold and cheerless, but now it has become a place where the people of Chang and flock like duck. It suddenly became lively. I'm really curious about how many students he will be able to recruit this time. Li Er smiled slightly and said, It must be a lot. This kid is very good at creating public opinion. With the overwhelming publicity of Datong Daily, there's no place in the 358 provinces of the Tang Empire that doesn't know about the engineering school and Yanhuang College. But this college, I've only seen the sand table and haven't seen what it really looks like. When I'm free in the future, I'll accompany Maid Guanyin to take a look. Empress Zhongsun smiled sweetly and said, okay? Li Er used his chin to press against Empress Zhongsun's forehead, slowly saying, Just geography. This brat gave Zhen such a big surprise. I heard from Qinke that this batch of students from Yanhuang College will be learning 4 courses. We are now looking forward to what surprises the other 3 courses will bring to us and the great Tang. Dad, why do you have to wake me up early in the morning every day? The next morning. Duke Lu's mansion. Qing Chumo rubbed his sleepy eyes and complained to Qing Yaojin. Good morning. Early my ass. Don't you see that your schoolmates are already on their way to Yunshan? You're the only lazy one who's late every day. Qing Yaojin slapped the table and reprimanded in a bad mood. Qing Chumo pursed his lips and said nonchalantly, Isn't it the same whether we go sooner or later? Xiaoxian and I are good brothers. Xiaoxian won't blame me if I go late. This is really a dead pig that isn't afraid of boiling water, thick-skinned, stinking shameless. Qing Yaojin was so angry that he glared. He picked up the stick next to him and waved it over. You stinking brat! You don't know how to make progress and you still have a reason? You don't let lousy study hard and always score last in the exams. You don't let lousy practice martial arts well. You're already so old and you're still a dabbler in the body tempering stage. How did Laozi give birth to such a disappointing son? Ching Chumo fled in all directions while shouting, "Hey, hey, hey! Dad, stop it! Why are you acting crazy so early in the morning? So what if my grades are last? I'm not in the last 5, and I've never been on the roll of shame. So what if I'm in the body tempering stage? A lot of people haven't even succeeded in drawing qi." To be honest, Ching Chumo felt wronged. He knew what he was capable of, and he also knew that he wasn't outstanding. However, he originally thought that his father would also know. He hadn't been outstanding for so long, so why did his father suddenly explode today? Could it be that he was provoked by something? Humph. You little bastard, you're really shameless? See if Laozi doesn't beat you to death today. When Cheng Yaojin heard his son's shameful words, he, who was already angry, completely exploded. He dodged and easily caught Ching Chumo, who was still trying to escape. Then, he raised the stick and greeted Ching Chumo's butt. Ouch! Mother! Save me! Ching Chumo's stick hit hard. Ching Chumo immediately cried out in pain. Ah, no, it should be crying for his mother. Stop! Sure enough, Madame Ching didn't let her son down. She came out after being called for a long time. She angrily walked over and snatched the stick from Cheng Yaojin's hand. Then, she scolded, "You old thing, why are you acting crazy so early in the morning? It's fine if you're crazy, but why are you venting your anger on Ugly Cow?" Cheng Yaojin snorted. "I'm educating this ignorant thing." Madame Ching didn't let it go. "What do you mean ignorant? Did you only know what kind of character your son has today? If you're angry, go to the backyard and move stones. Don't vent your anger on your son. Did you only know what kind of character your son has today?" Ching Chumo was so touched that he almost cried. For the first time, he felt that the feeling of being looked down on was so good. Cheng Yaojin was hit where it hurt, and he angrily said, "Humph! A loving mother is a loser. Let's not compare Xiaoxian. Look at that kid from the Dugu family. He became a master before he was 30. What about this kid? He only knows how to be lazy and idle all day long." Ching Chumo was stunned. He finally understood why his father went crazy this morning. It was because he saw someone else's outstanding child and was provoked. He chuckled and said, "Ha ha! Dad, so that's why you're angry. That kid, Dugu Xian, only became a master by luck with Xiaoshuan's help. Besides, he has a strong foundation in martial arts. Do you have to compare him to me?" Ching Yaojin said angrily, "Oh, you still have the nerve to say that? Between you and Dugu Xian, who got to know Xiaoxian first? And in the end? In the end, Xiaoxian helped Dugu Xian to break through, and you're still sleeping at home. You don't know how to reflect on yourself." Ching Chumo was puzzled. "What should I reflect on? Reflect on why Xiaoxian helped Dugu Xian to break through and not you. How would I know why? You," Ching Yaojin really wanted to say, "I'm really ket up." However, his wife was beside him, and he could not say that. He could only say angrily, "Isn't it because you're lazy and don't know how to improve yourself that Xiaoxian doesn't want to be with you?" Ching Chumo pursed his lips and said, "That's not it. Xiaoxian is much lazier than me." Cheng Yaojin was speechless. Chapter 598. Achoo! Ah achoo! Li Zishuan, who was engrossed in writing in the study, inexplicably sneezed twice. He was already under pressure from a bunch of chemical reactions, and at this moment, he was even more depressed. Damn! Which family's little girl is thinking of me? Sigh. It's also a sin to be too outstanding. As the saying goes, when you sneeze once, someone will scold you. When you sneeze twice, someone will think of you. When you sneeze thrice, someone will think of you. And when you sneeze thrice, someone will think of you. That's why Li Zishuan shamelessly muttered to himself. Heh! Who are you thinking of? Han Yushi pushed open the door at this time and quietly came to Li Zixuan's side. Li Zixuan blushed and quickly said, "Cough, cough? Do you still need to ask? Of course, I'm thinking of you." Han Yushi sneered and said, "Glib tongue, it's clearly not like that." Although that was what she said, Han Yushi didn't intend to dig into it seriously. She was mostly joking. Li Zixuan smiled embarrassedly. Suddenly, he caught a glimpse of the cup of bright red juice that Han Yushi brought in. He said in surprise, "Ah, this is iced watermelon juice?" Logically speaking, there were no juicers in the Tang Dynasty. Han Yushi smiled gently and said, "Ah, how did you know?" "I smelled it." Was there anything more blissful than having a cup of iced watermelon juice in front of him on a hot summer day? Li Zixuan didn't bother to ask Han Yushi how she squeezed the juice at this time. He directly picked up the cup and enjoyed it while answering Han Yushi's question. Now it seemed that although writing books at home was a little tough, it felt good to have a considerate person by his side to take care of him. 6 days later. Haha. I'm finally freaking liberated. Damn it, I didn't expect being a rich second-generation heir to be so tough. On this day, Li Zixuan finally walked out of his western courtyard. His 1-month closed-door training had made the people of Chang very lonely. Without the big news that he made every now and then, the people of Chang felt that their lives were less interesting. Fortunately, they still had the Datong daily to pass the time. Young master, have you come out of seclusion?" Xiao He trotted over from a distance and said with a bright smile. That's right. What do you think? I went into seclusion for a month. Xiao He, did you miss me?" Li Zixuan squinted his eyes and teased. Cough. Actually, it couldn't be said to be flirting. He had been with the 2 maidservants for so long that they couldn't be more familiar with each other. Rather than flirting, it was more like playing around. Li Zixuan would never joke about this kind of thing with an unfamiliar girl. Speaking of which, during the month of his closed-door training, not only were the people outside unable to see him, but even many people in the mansion rarely saw him. Xiao He, who spent every day in the western courtyard, could only see Li Zixuan's real body when he came out to go to the toilet every day. No way. Young master, aren't you afraid that young madam won't let you enter the room at night? Xiao He wasn't afraid of Li Zixuan. She stuck out her tongue and said mischievously. Li Zixuan was amused by her words. He laughed carelessly and said, My Yushi isn't such a person. On the other hand, little girl, when you get married in the future, you might become a fierce shrew. Young master, you. Xiao He was furious. She put one hand on her waist and pointed at Li Zixuan with the other. She said angrily, Young master, you're too much. Xiao He doesn't want to get married. I'm ignoring you. If the person in front of her wasn't Li Zixuan, with Xiao He's unruly temperament, she would have already verbally abused him or punched him. It was rare that the little girl could still maintain her last bit of rationality at this time. Little girl, you still want to fight with me? Li Zixuan looked at Xiao He's back and muttered to himself happily. It seemed pretty good to be able to bicker with such an unruly little girl every day. Husband, you're really too much. How can a girl like Xiao He withstand your words? Han Yushi walked in from outside the courtyard and complained to Li Zixuan slightly. Li Zixuan laughed and said, It's fine, it's fine. This little girl forgets everything after a meal and a nap. Han Yushi was speechless. She looked at Xiao He's back and then turned to Li Zixuan and said, By the way, Mother just said that the villagers of the Han family manor and Plum Village have begun to urge us to collect rent. It just so happens that you've finished your work, husband, so I won't participate. Li Zixuan was stunned. Only then did he remember that he was a big landlord. Under normal circumstances, he only needed to eat at home and wait for death. However, since ancient times, when would a villager take the initiative to urge the owner to collect rent? It was really strange. Shaking his head and throwing away the messy thoughts in his mind, Li Zishuan replied, "That's fine. I'll go on a trip. But wife, how's the harvest on the farm this year?" With his current wealth, of course, he didn't care about the rent. The quality of the annual harvest didn't affect him much, but the impact on the villagers was too great. That was why he asked this question. Han Yushi's face darkened when she heard this. She said softly, "There's little rain this year. I heard from my father that the harvest on the farm wasn't very good. Overall, it will be about 10 to 20% less than last year." The villagers of the Han family manor and Plum Village didn't have much of an impact because you gave them a discount on raising chickens. However, the villagers of the other farms probably didn't have it easy. Li Zishuan heard this and couldn't help but ask, "Didn't the imperial court also issue a decree to reduce the burden of raising chickens? Although it's not as strong as our families, it can at least reduce their burden?" Han Yushi rolled her eyes and said helplessly, "Husband, aren't you asking the obvious? Although the imperial court's decree can reduce the burden of some people, that's only for the villagers who have land to enjoy. Most of the villagers farm the land of the landlords. Those landlords can't wait to collect 100% of the rent. Why would they care about the lives of the villagers?" The Tang Dynasty implemented a system of equalization of fields. Yongye fields and oral fields were divided. Yongye fields could be inherited and didn't need to pay taxes. Oral fields had to pay taxes and had to be returned to the country when they died. Every adult could be allocated 80 mu of oral fields and 20 mu of Yongye field. Yongye fields could be bought and sold. When the year wasn't good, many people's oral fields weren't enough to pay taxes. They had no choice but to sell their Yongye fields. The landlords collected a lot of Yongye fields, but their oral fields were only 80 mu. They only needed to pay a small amount of taxes. What about the villagers who sold their Yongye fields? Although they received a large sum of money from selling their land, they still had 80 mu of oral fields to pay taxes. When the year wasn't good, they would still have to spend a lot of money. Therefore, many people eventually went to the landlords to rent land to make up for their income. Chapter 599. The land equalization system implemented at the beginning of the Tang Dynasty was one of the means to cultivate the feudal landlord's annexation power and consolidate the foundation of the feudal regime. The law itself was to protect the landlord class, so of course it would be more lenient to them. The reason for this situation was mainly because the era was different. The sharpest contradictions in society were also different, so the policies implemented were naturally different. At the beginning of the Tang Dynasty, when the country was just established, there were many things waiting to be done. A lot of land was wasteland, so there was no need to worry about land. On the other hand, the ruler had to cultivate a group of feudal landlords to consolidate the regime. But later, with the development of land annexation, farmers lost a lot of land, and rent adjustment could not continue to be implemented. The government's land tax income was greatly reduced, and financial difficulties. Therefore, during the Tang Dizong period, the tax system was reformed and implemented two tax systems. The biggest change was to change the tax based on the number of people to the tax based on the amount of land. This increased the country's land tax income and weakened the landlord's power. Li Zishuan sighed helplessly. "Ai? If you are poor, you should take care of yourself. If you are rich, you should help the world. Now I, Li Zishuan, can be considered to have a small fortune, but I am powerless to help the world." Logically speaking, he also felt that the current land tax system of the Tang Dynasty was a trap, but what could he do? Although his rank was not low, he did not have much authority in the imperial court. With his strength alone, he could not change the situation at all. Han Yushi stepped forward and took the initiative to hold Li Zishuan's hand. She said, "Helping the world has nothing to do with one's personal wealth. No matter how rich husband is, it's impossible to support everyone in the world, right? Laozi said, instead of giving a man fish, it is better to teach a man to fish. Instead of giving others money, it is better to teach them a survival skill. In fact, husband, what you are doing now is helping the world. Yanwang College teaches and educates people. 10 years later, or even 100 years later, people will forget how glorious and rich our family is now, but there will definitely be a lot of people who will remember that our family's Yanwang College has cultivated a large number of talents. Although husband did not go to the battlefield to kill the enemy and expand the country's territory, what husband did is more glorious than those generals on the battlefield. This concubine feels extremely honored to have married such an outstanding person like my husband. Han Yushi's words could be said to be true. That love that came from the depths of her heart, no one doubted that it was fake. After Li Zixuan heard this, he could not help but be stunned on the spot. Right now, he felt really comfortable in his heart. Cough, cough. That's right, so comfortable. After living for 2 lifetimes, this was the first time he had a female fan, and it was a liquor. How could he not feel comfortable? Also, Han Yushi almost praised him as a saint. This made him a little smug. And, such a real female fan, pink? Li Zixuan wiped his nose and said, cough, cough. Wife, you're praising me so much that I'm almost embarrassed. Come, come, come. Say a few more words. The words that were just about to come out of Han Yushi's mouth were immediately blocked by Li Zixuan's big turn of events. She almost choked. She was both angry and amused as she said, I was serious just now, but you're being sarcastic again. Young master. Young master. When the husband and wife were flirting, Xiaoxi took small steps and ran in from outside. She bowed to Han Yushi and then said to Li Zixuan, Young master. Old Mr. Li Gang sent his little grandson to pass a message. He said that there's something important for you to go to his residence for a chat. Oh? Li Zixuan was stunned at first, then he reacted and said to Han Yushi, Wife, looks like I have to go and get busy again. In the afternoon, let Uncle Wang go to the manor to collect the rent. Father-in-law is there to take care of it, so there shouldn't be any problems. You just rest at home. Sigh. What's the matter? Husband? Han Yushi asked in confusion, but Li Zixuan's figure had already disappeared. This made her a little depressed. Xiaoxi. Old Mr. Li, why are you looking for my husband? Since the main character had run away, Han Yushi could only ask Xiaoxi, the witness. Xiaoxi's face was bitter as she shook her head and said, Young mistress, even you don't know about this, how would I know? When Han Yushi heard that, she felt that it made sense and felt slightly depressed. At this moment, Li Zixuan ran back in a hurry and shouted as he ran, Hey, hey, hey! Wife, wife! Hurry! Hurry and help your husband to tie up my hair and change my clothes. Just as he ran out of the front yard, he realized that he was wearing the short-sleeved shirt and shorts that his wife had specially made for him. Moreover, his appearance was very bad. Because he had been staying at home to write his book, his long hair was messy. If it weren't for his handsome face, he would probably be treated as a beggar walking on the street at this moment. Han Yushi was speechless by Li Zixuan's actions. She followed Li Zixuan into the house and covered her mouth as she laughed. Since when did my husband care so much about his appearance? After dressing up, Li Zixuan brought Li Gang's 6 or 7-year-old grandson, Li Anren, and rushed to Tsujiang Square. When he heard Xiaoxi say that Li Gang was looking for him, he immediately thought of the time when he personally visited Li Gang. Li Gang had told him that he would help him find a few respectable teachers from the academy. Among them, there were a few people who knew about mechanisms and machines. Li Zixuan had always wanted such talents. That was why he was so concerned about his appearance today. He didn't want others to look down on him because of his sloppy appearance. That would be too much of a joke. Furthermore, if he wore short-sleeved shirt and shorts over, Li Gang would probably kick him and scold him for being a disgrace. Anren, how can your grandfather be at ease and come over alone? Li Zishuan had his own way of coaxing children. After stuffing a few pieces of the Li family's exclusive delicacies, Li Anren instantly started calling out, "Brother Xian, Brother Xian." The speed of his betrayal was within Li Zishuan's expectations. An old grandpa and two big brothers came over. Grandfather couldn't leave, so he asked Anren to come over. Li Anren licked the syrup at the corner of his mouth, and said in a childish voice. When Li Zishuan heard this, he couldn't help but feel happy. "Ha. Good. Looks like Li Gang really found a teacher for me. A teacher from Yanwang College is here." When he thought of this, Li Zishuan patted Li Anren's head and smiled. "Anren, let's go. Let's go see your grandfather." When he thought of the mysterious teacher that Li Gang mentioned who was proficient in machines, Li Zishuan couldn't help but feel unusually excited. Chapter 600. His family's carriage had just been pulled to the rear courtyard for a thorough cleaning this morning, so it shouldn't be dry yet. Li Gang didn't seem to be in a hurry either. From the looks of it, he should be freeloading at Li Zishuan's house for lunch. Therefore, Li Zishuan brought Li Anren with him, and rushed to Crooked River Square on foot. For nearly a month, they had not strolled outside like now. Li Zishuan looked at the people coming and going around. He felt that Chang'an City seemed to be more lively than before, but this was only a guess in his heart. He was not sure. "Hey, little brother, please wait." At this moment, a young man carrying a bookcase, who looked like a scholar going to the capital to take the exam, walked over quickly and greeted Li Zishuan. Li Zishuan looked around. After making sure that the scholar was asking him, he asked curiously, "Your Excellency, what's the matter?" The scholar smiled shyly, then cupped his hands and said, "I heard that Yanwang College is spreading the knowledge of making mortals soar in the sky, and on the 18th of this month, they are recruiting students. Therefore, I came all the way from Bingzhou to see this grand event. I am ashamed to say that I have just arrived in Chang'an and am not familiar with the place. I have passed by several inns, but there are no vacant rooms. I don't know if there are any other inns where I can stay. I hope this little brother can give me some guidance." Li Zishuan was stunned. It turned out that the person in front of him had come all the way from Taiyuan to take the exam of Yanwang College. Thinking about it, today was the 8th of September, and Yanwang College's entrance exam would begin in 10 days. No wonder there were so many people in Chang'an City. Most of them should be candidates from other places. Thinking of this, Li Zishuan could not help but smile and said, "So you are here for Yanwang College. Sorry for the disrespect. Brother, if you want to stay in a hotel, I recommend you to go to Chongren Square. There are all kinds of inns there, and I am sure there will be vacant rooms for you." Chongren Square in the northwest of the East Market of Chang'an was a place where inns gathered. To the west of this square was the Imperial City, where the government was located. It was very convenient to go there for the examination. To the southeast was the East Market, where it was convenient to go shopping. To the south was the Peace Square, where it was convenient to talk to the prostitutes. Because of these advantages, this square became the residence of scholars from other places who came to Chang'an for the selection of officials and the imperial examination. The service industry such as restaurants that were attached to it were also very prosperous. It was noisy day and night and the lights were endless. It was just like the nightlife center of Chang'an. Of course, the cost of living in a bustling place was naturally incomparable to other places. Li Zishuan also saw that the young scholar in front of him was dressed exquisitely and had a good temperament. He reckoned that his family background was not bad, so he recommended him to Chongren Lane. Now that so many examinees had gathered in Chang'an, those cheap inns were almost full. Only high-end inns could satisfy the needs of this man in front of him. The young scholar asked, "Where is this Chongren Square? Little brother, please enlighten me." Li Zishuan felt his teeth ache. He thought that this scholar's speech was a little troublesome. He pointed to the north and said, "Brother, follow this road to the north. After passing through 4 residential squares, you will see Chongren Lane. The scholar's face lit up. He hurriedly cupped his hands and thanked, "Little brother, thank you for your advice. I am Di Jixuan. If fate allows us to meet again in the future, I will definitely invite you to drink and chat." Di Jixuan? Li Zixuan's heart skipped a beat. In his previous life, when he read Young Di Renjie, there was 4 heroes of Capital City. One of them was Di Jixuan, Di Renjie's father. However, he had been here for so long and was still a native of Chang'an. He had never heard of the 4 heroes of Capital City. It was obvious that the stories in the novel were all fabricated. However, he did not expect to meet the future divine minister of Tang, Di Renjie's father. He really had the halo of a main character. "Brother Di, you are too polite. I believe that we will meet again in the future. Brother Di, don't you have any relatives in Chang'an? Why do you want to stay in an inn?" Li Zixuan smiled faintly and asked with deep meaning. If he remembered correctly, Di Renjie's grandfather, Di Jixuan's father, should be an official in the imperial court. According to historical records, Di Jixuan's father, Di Xiaoxiu, had been the general manager of the army, the general, the left minister, the military envoy of Bian province, the golden-purple Guanglu Daifu, the scattered cavalry officer, and the provincial governor of Feng and Bian province. Later on, he was conferred the title of Lin Yingnan and had a prominent position in the early Tang dynasty. Di Jixuan was Di Xiaoxiu's 5th son. He was a man of great talent. Since his father was a high-ranking official in the imperial court and his family was wealthy, Di Jixuan had received a good education from a young age. According to the normal course of history, Di Jixuan would have taken the imperial examination in the 4th year of Zhenguan and become an official. In the same year, he would have given birth to Di Renjie, the divine minister of Tang. At this time, Di Jixuan's face turned red. He cupped his hands and said, "I do have relatives working in Chang'an. However, I don't want to cause any trouble when I come to take the examination of Yanhuang College, so, it was also because Di Jixuan saw that Li Zixuan was dressed in luxurious clothes and had an extraordinary temperament that he explained that he was definitely not the son of an ordinary family. After all, they were in Chang'an, a city where officials were as numerous as dogs. Although his father was an official, he did not want to make enemies for his father. Li Zixuan chuckled when he heard that and hurriedly waved his hand. "Ha ha! I know. Brother Di, you don't have to say any more. Let's go to Chongren Square." From Di Jixuan's words, he guessed that Di Xiaoxiu didn't bring all his family members to Chang'an when he was an official. He also hoped that Di Jixuan would take the imperial examination and become an official. Di Jixuan was young and frivolous. He was attracted by the large number of reports about Yanhuang Academy in the newspaper. However, because of Di Xiaoxiu's opinion, he could only secretly come to Chang'an to take the examination. This was a rebellious young man who left the Li family without permission. Di Jixuan breathed a sigh of relief and said, "Ha ha! Then I will take my leave. Thank you very much, little brother." Li Zixuan smiled and cupped his hands in return. He said, "Brother Di, I wish you all the best in the examination and have a good time in Chang'an. If you are free in the next few days, you can go to Yunshan Mountain in the eastern suburbs of Chang'an and then take a look at Yanhuang College. Brother Di will not be disappointed." Di Jixuan's eyes flashed. He nodded and said, "I will go and take a look." After that, the two of them cupped their hands and said goodbye. Li Zixuan took Li Anren and continued to rush to Crooked River Square. Looking at the crowded Chang'an, he muttered to himself, "It's the golden autumn of September. Talents from all over the world are gathering. I wonder how many students will pass the examination this time." Chapter 601. According to the statistics of the various branches of the Tang Dynasty daily, there were a total of 3,800 students who applied for the Yanhuang Academy. Even if they used the 50% reference rate, there would still be more than 1,900 students who came to take the exam. This number was more than the number of examinees who came to Chang'an every year. The imperial exam of the Tang Dynasty was held in January or February every year. Generally, registration would start in November of the previous year. The exam location was at the southern courtyard of the Ministry of Rites of the Shangshu province. The examiner was the assistant minister of the Ministry of Rites. Generally, the number of examinees who came to Chang'an for the exam every year was around 1,000. At its peak, it could reach 2,000 examinees. However, Li Zishuan's academy was able to attract 4,000 examinees. One had to say that his publicity work was really on point. In many people's eyes, Yanhuang College's entrance exam was second only to the imperial exam. After all, the imperial exam had a limited number of examinees. Mingjing could not exceed 100 examinees. Jinshi could not exceed 30 examinees. Yanhuang College didn't seem to have any restrictions as long as one could pass the exam. After entering Yanhuang College, one could use the Yanhuang College's mathematics to participate in the imperial exam. If one failed, one could use engineering to earn money to support his family and become a rich man. Or one could invent a divine artifact. Like Li Zishuan, one could directly become a baron from a commoner and reach the pinnacle of life. Of course, there were fewer people who took the imperial exam than the Yanhuang College's entrance exam. Another reason was the threshold. The threshold for the imperial exam was obviously much higher than the threshold for Yanhuang College. The examinees who took the imperial exam came from two sources. The examinees who took the imperial exam came from Shengtu and Xianggong. There were many subjects in the imperial exam. According to the examinees' conditions and the content of the exam, they were divided into Xiucai, Mingjing, Jinshi, Mingfa, Mingjing, etc. Shengtu were the examinees who passed the entrance exam of the Imperial College, Hongwen Institute, Chongwen Institute, and various institute. Xianggong, on the other hand, was a person who had passed the capital and state examinations. They were also known as high scholars. They had to be recommended by someone. The examinees who came to the capital for the imperial examinations had to find a backer, hoping to be recognized by others. Therefore, it wasn't until the Kaiyuan age that the number of examinees participating in the imperial examination finally broke through the 2,000 mark. This number was far less than the number of examinees in the Song Dynasty. In the 5th year of Zhenzong Xianping of the Northern Song Dynasty, there were more than 44,000 examinees in the imperial capital. In comparison, the threshold for Yanhuang College's entrance exam was much lower. As long as one had a basic understanding of the 4 books and 5 classics, and then delved into new mathematics, it was very likely that one would be admitted. There was no need to go to the top of the school, give gifts, or give red packets, and so on. Naturally, the number of people applying for the exam was much higher. After walking for about half an hour, Li Zishuan finally arrived at Xujiang Square with Li Anren. "Haha! You're finally here. How rude of you to make us 2 old bones wait for a junior like you for so long." When they arrived at the Li family's house, Li Gang heard someone knocking on the door and came to open it. When he saw Li Zishuan, he couldn't help but laugh. Li Zishuan hurriedly clasped his hands and apologized. "I was delayed by something on the way here, please don't blame me for it." After saying that, he saw 3 men in brown linen clothes following behind Li Gang. One of them was slightly older, estimated to be in his 40s or 50s. His hair was faintly silver, and his face was serious. His skin was slightly dark, and there were many wrinkles at the corners of his eyes. He was tall and gave off a strong impression. However, why did this person look like a laborer and not a teacher? Why did Li Gang invite him over? Could it be that he guessed wrong? The other 2 people were slightly younger, but they were a little thin, and belonged to the kind of people who were only skin and bones. At first glance, it was obvious that they were malnourished and often suffered hardships. However, the aura of these two young people was actually at the early stage of qi refining. This really surprised Li Zixuan. "Sir, who are these people?" Li Zixuan looked at the three of them and asked Li Gang. Although these three people didn't look like teachers from their appearance, Li Zixuan still had to ask out of politeness and respect. Moreover, he wasn't a person who cared about appearance. For men, as long as they didn't look scary and were capable, he didn't care about whether they were handsome or not. Cough cough, when it came to women, he still paid a little attention to appearance. "Ha ha. Let's talk inside." Li Gang laughed and led them into the front hall. When they entered the room, they felt a trace of coolness. Li Zixuan smiled slightly. This was the ice that Li Gang had asked his subordinates to send to Li Gang's house every day after Li Gang agreed to work at Yanwang College. It could be considered an exclusive benefit from the college. After they sat down, Li Gang raised his hand and laughed. "Ha ha. Little Xian, let me introduce you. This is the 45th generation of the Mo family, Mr. Mo Huai. These two are the younger generation of Mr. Mo's family. They are Mo Zhong and Mo Yun. Brother Mo, this is Li Zixuan that this old man told you about. Don't be fooled by his young age. His ability is not small at all." After Li Gang finished speaking, Li Zixuan's eyes widened in shock. There was a huge wave in his heart. The Mo family, the Mo family's giant, this top school or top organization that originated from the Warring States period, its leader actually looked like this? And sat in front of him? The Mo family's giant. In the legend of Qin, the Mo family's giant, the six-fingered black warrior, wore a black cloak and held an ink plum that looked like a sword but not an attack. He had black eyebrows without a sharp edge and was all-powerful. Even the 5 elders of the Yinyang school could not take him down. There was also the third generation of the Mo family's giant, the mysterious Yandan. What kind of existence was that? Why did the Mo family's giant in front of him look so unsophisticated? Even if he was a low-level version of the six-fingered black warrior, he would not be so low-level? Also, the Mo family's chivalry was so strong. From the Qin Dynasty to the Han Dynasty, the various rulers had never stopped suppressing the Mo family. Under such an environment, how could the Mo family survive until the Tang Dynasty? Li Zixuan did not read about this in his previous life. His understanding of the Mo family was still limited to the anime of the legend of Qin Dynasty. As for the status of the Mo family in the Tang Dynasty, he had no idea at all. Greetings to Mr. Mo and the two brothers Mo. With a stomach full of questions, Li Zixuan cupped his hands and greeted the three of them. "I'm just a villager in the mountains. I can't accept the courtesy of Mr. Li." Mo Huai's cheeks moved slightly as he said with a solemn expression. There was no trace of a smile on his wrinkled old face. Li Zixuan's mouth twitched. This old man was not someone who was easy to get along with. That's right. He was the giant of the Mo family. How could he become a teacher so easily? Looks like my mission today is not easy. This is the first collision of modern and ancient scientific knowledge, right? Let's see who's stronger and who's weaker, Li Zixuan thought maliciously in his heart. His principle in life was that if others were not convinced, then he would torture them until they were convinced. Chapter 602. Cough cough. Old brother Mo, little Xian is outstanding in both martial arts and knowledge among the younger generation of our great Tang. Don't look down on him because of his age. In the main hall, Li Gang stroked his beard and said to Mo Huai with a spurious smile. He had lived a lifetime, from the emperor to the common people. What kind of person had he not seen? He had seen Mo Huai's reaction just now and remembered it in his heart, which was why he had reminded him. Of course, he was extremely dissatisfied with Mo Huai's contemptuous attitude because Li Zixuan was his superior. Mo Huai's contempt was also an insult to him, Li Gang. Mo Huai's expression froze. He looked at Li Gang and said with some dissatisfaction, Wenji, you came all the way here to send this Mo to Chang, and just to let this Mo work under a 14 or 15-year-old child. Although the Mo clan has declined and disappeared from the world today, our Mo clan has not fallen to the point of listening to the orders of a child. Mo Huai you. Li Gang's face flushed red. Li Gang had wanted to give the dying Mo clan a chance to prolong its feeble existence and display its remaining strength. But now, not only did Mo Huai not appreciate his kindness, he was even so arrogant. Li Gang could not help but feel anger rising in his heart. Haha. A hero's background does not matter, and a man's ambition does not depend on his age. Every dog has its day. Don't bully the young for being poor. The great son of the Mo clan is actually so short-sighted. It seems like the Mo clan's decline is not without reason. Before Li Gang could finish speaking, Li Zishuan mocked him. Some people, even at the lowest point in their lives, were still unwilling to give up their lofty status and exuded an air of arrogance. This kind of person needed to be taught a lesson, and Li Zishuan would never indulge this bad habit of theirs. Mo Zhong and Mo Yun paled at these words. Mo Huai slapped the table and stood up, scolding Li Zishuan angrily. Impudent! How dare an ignorant child humiliate our Mo clan? Mo Zhong drew his sword and said, Uncle, I'll go teach him a lesson. Then, he ignored Li Gang's attempt to stop him and channeled his qi into his sword to stab Li Zishuan. Tisk! You don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Li Zishuan sneered. With his current strength in the Grandmaster realm, Mo Zhong's sword was like a child's play, so he didn't even bother to dodge. He just stood there and stretched out 2 fingers in an extremely pretentious manner, accurately capturing the trajectory of Mo Zhong's sword. With a clang sound, Mo Zhong could no longer move forward. Silence. Everyone in the room, including Li Gang, widened their eyes in disbelief. Mo Zhong's face turned red. He was so ashamed that he wanted to die. In his opinion, the child in front of him was so much younger than him. How could he not be able to defeat him? However, reality was always so cruel. Right now, he only wanted to withdraw and retreat, but Li Zishuan's 2 fingers seemed to have infinite strength, making his sword immovable. Humph! Those who kill will die, those who injure will be punished. You call yourselves followers of the school of Mo, but have you forgotten the philosophy that your Mo clan has always pursued? Today, I'll teach you a lesson. Li Zishuan sneered. Then, everyone heard a clang. Mo Zhong's sword broke from the middle. Half of the sword fell to the ground, reflecting the sunlight from outside on Mo Zhong's face. Mo Zhong said in shock, Grandmaster? No. Impossible. How can there be such a young Grandmaster? Mo Huai's expression changed slightly. He looked straight at Li Zishuan and said, Those who kill will die, those who injure will be punished. This is the way of the school of Mo that my Mo clan has pursued for thousands of years. Where did you learn this from? Li Zishuan was stunned. He just vaguely remembered that someone in The Legend of Qin had said this before. He didn't expect that he would actually run into the main character. His luck was really unparalleled. There was a related story about those who kill will die, and those who injure will be punished. The 4th generation of the school of Mo had his abdomen in the Qin kingdom. His son had killed someone and should have been executed according to the law. However, King Qin Hui thought that his abdomen was old and only had one son, so he ordered that his son not be killed. However, his abdomen said that the way of the school of Mo stated, Those who kill will die, and those who injure will be punished. This was a necessary measure to prohibit killing and injuring others. It was in line with the righteousness of the world. However, he still insisted on killing his son. This story vividly reflected the strict discipline of the school of Mo. It was precisely because of this that the followers of the school of Mo were very good at fighting. They had the spirit of walking on fire and dancing on the sword, even if death does not come. Ha ha! The way of the school of Mo? Do you still know that this is the way of the school of Mo? You use weapons at the slightest disagreement. Not to mention that I'm an official of the imperial court, even if I'm just a commoner. Do you people of the school of Mo have the right to draw your swords against me? Li Zishuan stood with his hands clasped behind his back. With a righteous look on his face, he spat out unforgiving words. Mo Huai's face darkened. He hesitated for a moment, then lowered his voice and ordered, Mo Zhong, you violated the way of the school of Mo. Hurry and apologize to Li Xiannan. Ah? Mo Zhong's face turned red. He said reluctantly, Uncle, go quickly. If Li Xiannan doesn't forgive you, you will no longer be a member of the school of Mo. Mo Huai waved his hand and said coldly. When Mo Zhong heard this, his body couldn't help but tremble. Bean-sized beads of sweat rolled down his forehead. One had to know that there were ice cubes in this room to lower the temperature. Li Xiannan just now was. After struggling for a long time, Mo Zhong finally moved his feet and arrived in front of Li Zishuan. He then bowed and cupped his hands in apology. Li Zishuan shook his head and didn't let Mo Zhong continue. He said directly, no need. I, Li Zishuan, am not someone who will seek revenge for the smallest grievance. Just treat today's matter as a misunderstanding. Before figuring out what these three members of the school of Mo had, Li Zishuan didn't want to offend them too much. Mo Zhong was in disbelief. He thought that Li Zishuan would definitely not let go of such a great opportunity to hit someone when they were down, but he didn't expect the outcome to be like this. Mo Zhong opened his mouth. After a long while, he finally squeezed out the words, thank you. Then, he returned to his original position gloomily. When Li Gang and Mo Huai saw this, they both looked at Li Zishuan in surprise. Li Zishuan smiled and continued the original topic. He asked, Juzi, from what you said earlier, you feel that coming to Yanhuang College as a teacher is beneath your status, right? The corners of Mo Huai's mouth twitched when he heard this. This kid is really cunning. A moment later, he replied, earlier, Brother Wenji said that you're outstanding in both martial arts and knowledge among the younger generation of the great Tang. You've already proved that you're indeed very talented in the path of martial arts. Now, it's time to prove your knowledge. Then, we will talk about other things. Chapter 603. Prove my knowledge? When Li Zishuan heard this, the corners of his mouth couldn't help but curl up. If Kong Ingda wanted to compete with him in terms of knowledge, he might be afraid because he didn't know much about the Confucian classics. However, the person in front of him was a big shot of the school of Mo, so it was a different story. Although his engineering knowledge did not originate from the Mo family, it had a lot to do with them. The Mo family was most famous for machinery and machinery. Back then, Moz was proficient in handicraft and could be compared to the craftsmen of that time. As a modern engineering student, Li Zishuan felt that he should have a lot in common with the people of the Mo family. Haha. I can prove my knowledge, but there has to be a prize. Otherwise, if anyone doubts my knowledge, won't I have to waste my time debating with them? Li Zishuan said slowly. He was trying to lure him into a trap. If anyone else dared to treat him like this today, he would definitely fall out with them. With his current capital, there was no need for him to tolerate anyone. However, the person in front of him was from the Mo family, so it was different. He really wanted to see how capable the only school with the highest technological content of the 100 schools of thought in the Pre-Qin Dynasty was. Mo Huai frowned and said, Haha. Do you think you have victory in your hands? You're really a newborn calf that is not afraid of a tiger. Alright, to prevent others from saying that I'm bullying the weak, you can decide the rules and the prize. Mo Yun panicked and said, Uncle, you can't do that. Li Zishuan laughed loudly and said, Haha. Good. Big shot, you're so bold. Since that's the case, I won't take advantage of you. Next, you and I will each come up with 5 questions in our field of expertise. The 5 questions will be limited to 1 hour. Whoever can answer the most questions will be the winner. If I win, you will have to stay in Yanhuang College to teach your knowledge. If I lose, I'm willing to take out 1,000 taels of gold as compensation. How about that? 1,000 taels of gold? Emo Zhong and Emo Yun's eyes widened and their breathing quickened. They were so shocked by this huge sum of money that they lost control of their hearts and souls. Although the Emo family was glorious for a period of time and had hundreds of thousands of disciples at its peak, after Moz, the Emo family no longer had a master of Moism. Coupled with the suppression of the ruling class, the Emo family's glory was long gone and there were fewer and fewer followers of the school of Mo in the world. Today, only the core followers of the school of Mo were still adhering to and carrying out the original intention of the school of Mo. In terms of life, they were no different from farmers and could barely afford to eat and wear. Mo Zhong and Mo Yun probably couldn't even imagine how much this 1,000 taels of gold was worth. Even Mo Huai's eyelids couldn't help but twitch. He clenched his hands behind his back and said, "Since you're so confident, how can this old man back down? If I lose, I'll go to your Yanhuang Academy to teach, and I won't ask for any salary. If you lose, I don't want your 1,000 taels of gold." The disciples of the Mahist family use rope ink for self-defense, and in case of emergencies, we wear fur as clothes and sable as uniforms. We work day and night and suffer ourselves to the extreme. We don't need these worldly things. At this moment, Li Zixuan had a higher opinion of Mo Huai. The school of Moism in the pre-Qin era was originally a school of thought formed by workers and peasants. Unlike the Confucian school of thought, which was never tired of eating and never tired of eating, the members of the school of Moism had to endure the hardships of life and had to have a heart of universal love for everyone. They could not talk about personal feelings. The current Mo Huai had a very good character, but he was a little arrogant. Then, Juzi, please set the question first, Li Zixuan said with a smile. If Mo Huai wasn't willing to accept the 1,000 taels of gold, then he wouldn't force him. Mo Zhong and Mo Yun had a look of pity on their faces, but they didn't dare to object. Li Gang, who was watching from the side, glanced at Li Zixuan rather worriedly. He wasn't worried that Li Zixuan would lose face if he lost this competition, but he was worried that if Li Zixuan lost this competition, then it would be a blow to the current momentum of Yanhuang College. At that time, there would probably be many people who would kick Li Zixuan while he was down. Mo Huai nodded. Actually, ever since Li Zixuan took the initiative to let Mo Zhong off, he didn't have much ill will towards Li Zixuan. However, that didn't mean that he was willing to teach at Yanhuang College. These were two different things. After pondering for a while, Mo Huai said in a deep voice, "First question, what is the universe?" Li Zixuan was shocked and cursed in his heart. He didn't expect Mo Huai, a person from the Tang Dynasty, to know about the universe. He just didn't know if the universe he was asking about was the same concept as the universe he knew. After hesitating for a while, he could only bite the bullet and answer, "The universe is the general name of all things. It is the unification of time and space. It is the existence of time is endless, space is boundless, and mass is infinite." This answer was the broad definition of the universe in the books of his previous life. The narrow definition of the universe referred to the space and matter outside the Earth's atmosphere. Of course, he couldn't explain the latter concept. What Li Zixuan didn't expect was that after hearing this answer, Mo Huai didn't laugh at him, nor did he have any doubts or confusion. Instead, he was a little shocked. Yes, he was shocked. At this moment, Mo Huai's heart was in turmoil. He said over and over again in his heart, "Impossible! Impossible! How could this little kid in front of me know the holy ancestors' definition of the universe?" That's right, as early as the pre-Qin era, Moz had a detailed definition of the universe. He believed that the universe was a continuous whole, and that individuals and parts were separated from this unified whole. They were all parts of this unified whole. In other words, the whole contained individuals, and the whole was made up of individuals. There was an inevitable organic connection between the whole and the individuals. Starting from this continuous view of the universe, Moz then established a theory of spacetime. He believed that spacetime was both limited and infinite. To the whole, spacetime was infinite, but to parts, spacetime was limited. He also pointed out that continuous spacetime was made up of spacetime elements. He defined spacetime elements as beginning and end. Beginning was the smallest unit in time that could not be divided again, and end was the smallest unit in space that could not be divided again. This formed the theory that spacetime was continuous and infinite. This continuous and infinite spacetime was made up of the smallest unit. There was a limit in infinity, and there was a discontinuity in continuity. Although Li Zixuan's theory couldn't be said to be completely consistent with Moz's theory, it coincided with the general idea. How could Moz not be shocked? At the same time, it also showed how awesome Moz was in the field of ancient science. Correct? Please listen to this old man's next question. Moz didn't argue and directly admitted that Li Zixuan had answered correctly. Then, he continued. Chapter 604. Please ask Juzi. Li Zixuan heaved a sigh of relief when he heard Moz's affirmative answer. At the same time, he couldn't help but feel shocked. Since Moz said so, didn't it mean that people in this era were really beginning to understand what the universe was? This made Li Zixuan feel incredulous. The second question, what is force? Li Zixuan was shocked, but how could Moz not be? He had read the definition of the universe from Moz's handwritten note. He thought that this question alone would make Li Zixuan retreat. He didn't expect Li Zixuan, a 14 or 15-year-old kid, to be able to turn the tables. This made Moz very puzzled. After thinking for a while, Moz asked the second question. Force? Is it the force of force? Li Zixuan suspected that he had heard wrong and asked uncertainly. Moz nodded and said, yes. Li Zixuan smiled and answered, force is the interaction between several objects. Interaction refers to the movement of an object that changes due to the existence of other objects. Objects only have two attributes, mass and speed. Therefore, force can change the state of motion of an object. If the speed of increase is defined as acceleration, then for the same object, the greater the force it receives, the greater its acceleration will be. Li Zixuan talked nonstop about all the knowledge points about force in the physics books of the later generations into words that the ancients could understand. Li Gang, who was listening at the side, was confused, not knowing what the hell Li Zixuan was talking about. Moz, on the other hand, narrowed his eyes and stared at Li Zixuan with an extremely solemn expression. At this moment, it was as if his heart had experienced a violent storm, and he was unable to calm down for a long time. The ancestor of the Mahist family, Moz, once had a detailed definition of force in the Mahist classics. He said, force is the reason for the movement of an object. In other words, force was the reason for the movement of an object, even if the action of the object's movement was called force. In this regard, he gave an example and said that it was like lifting a heavy object from bottom to top. It could only be done because of the action of force. At the same time, Moz pointed out that when an object was under force, it also produced a reaction force. For example, after two objects of equal mass collided, the two objects would move in opposite directions. If the difference in mass between two objects was great, although the object with greater mass would not move after the collision, the reaction force would still exist. Then Moz gave the definitions of movement and stop. He believed that movement was due to force pushing, and stop was the end of an object's motion after a certain period of time. Although MOZ didn't clearly point, he realized that the object's motion, after the external force, he realized that the object's state of motion could not exist forever after the external force disappeared. To a certain extent, MOZ's research in the field of physics and mechanics was definitely more than 2,000 years ahead of the entire world. If the Mahist family could replace the Confucian family and become the orthodox school of physics, then China would very likely become the origin and prosperity of the world's physics. After a full quarter of an hour, Li Zixuan finally stopped. The two young men, Mo Zhong and Mo Yun, no longer looked at Li Zixuan with contempt. As the core disciples of the Mahist family, they certainly had a certain understanding of Mo Zi's handwritten notes and works. However, they spent most of their time learning martial arts. In comparison, their knowledge in this area was far inferior to Li Zixuan. Mo Zhong and Mo Yun, who had always flaunted themselves as the children of reclusive masters, felt very hurt in their hearts. They couldn't win in terms of martial arts, let alone in terms of knowledge. Mo Huai closed his eyes and digested what Li Zixuan had just said in his heart, trying to find some loopholes in it. However, after a long while, he opened his eyes somewhat dispiritedly, because he found that what Li Zixuan had just said was not only impeccable, but also more detailed than what was recorded in the ancient books of the Mahist family. He even went a step further in explaining and proving some of the concepts. He had never heard of some of them, but he had to admit that Li Zixuan's words were very reasonable. Li Xiannan, you got this question right. Mo Huai looked at Li Zixuan with a complicated expression and said, although there were rare copies of the Mahist classics circulating in the world, in the social context of Confucianism, how many people in the world would read such an obscure book? Moreover, Li Zixuan's theories had clearly surpassed the definition of force in the Mahist classics. He had expanded force into a complete and detailed knowledge on the basis of Mahist classics. Where did Li Zixuan's knowledge come from? Why did he know so many things? There were many questions buried in Mo Huai's heart, but now was obviously not the time to ask, so he could only endure it. Li Zixuan smiled slightly. He was really liking this Mahist master in front of him more and more now. Where could he find such an advanced physics teacher? Li Gang had helped him a lot this time. The person involved, Li Gang, was now dumbfounded. He really wanted to ask Mo Huai, how did he get it right? He didn't understand at all just now. Mo Huai put his hands behind his back and walked 2 steps on the spot. Then, he suddenly had a flash of inspiration. He turned to Li Zixuan and asked, third question, put a small hole behind an open candle. What is the phenomenon behind the small hole? With that, he stared at Li Zixuan. Although he knew the answer to this question from the Mahist classics, he only knew how and did not know why. He planned to make things difficult for Li Zixuan later. Li Zixuan widened his eyes. He now suspected that Mo Huai was a transmigrator. He even knew about the image of a small hole? He was going to ascend to the heavens. What? Mr. Li can't answer? Mo Zhong asked happily when he saw this. Li Zixuan was shocked and speechless, but in Mo Zhong's eyes, he could not answer. Li Zixuan came back to his senses and suppressed the shock in his heart. Then, he smiled and said, it's not difficult. There will be an inverted image of a candle flame behind the small hole. As the small hole in the middle moves back and forth, the size of the image will also change. Juzi, am I right? As a modern engineering student, although Li Zixuan easily answered Mo Huai's question, he had a stomach full of questions like Mo Huai. This was because the image of a small hole involved the knowledge of geometrical optics. How could the people of the Tang Dynasty know about it? However, he did not know that Mo Huai only saw this knowledge from the Mahist classics. The real person who proposed the image of a small hole was Mozi. Not only did Mozi research in mechanics, but he also had deep attainments in geometrical optics. Chapter 605. More than 1,000 years ago, Moz had conducted an experiment on the imaging of small holes. He clearly pointed out that light traveled in a straight line, and the image formed by an object passing through a small hole was an inverted image. This was because when light passed through an object and then passed through a small hole, due to the straight line travel of light, the upper part of the object would be reflected below, and the lower part of the object would be reflected above. He also discussed the relationship between the size of the image, the object's tilt, and the distance of the light source. He pointed out that if an object was tilted or far, the shadow would be long and thin. If it was reflected light, the shadow would be formed between the object and the light source. In addition, Moz also conducted a systematic research on flat mirrors, concave mirrors, convex mirrors, and so on, and came up with a series of basic principles of geometric optics. He pointed out that flat mirrors formed images of the same size and symmetrical distance, but left and right were reversed. If two or more flat mirrors were to face each other and shine light, there would be repeated reflections, forming countless images. The image formed by a concave mirror was a positive image within the middle, a large image if far from the middle, a small image if near the middle, and a large image if near the middle. Outside the middle, an inverted image would be formed, a large image if near the middle, and a small image if far from the middle. A convex mirror only formed a positive image, a large image if near the middle, and a small image if far away. The middle, here, was the center of the spherical mirror. Although Moz had not been able to distinguish the difference between the center of the sphere and the focal point, and had confused the center of the sphere and the focal point together, his conclusion was basically consistent with the imaging principles of modern spherical mirrors. In the history of optics, Moz was the first scientist to conduct systematic research on geometric optics. It was not an exaggeration to say that Moz had laid the foundation of geometric optics, at least in China. As Joseph Needham said in the physics volume of The History of Science and Technology in China, Moz's research on optics was earlier than what we know of Greece, and not even India. At this moment, when Mo heard Li Zixuan's answer, he was not as surprised as the previous 2 times. Instead, he continued to ask, "Why is there an image of an inverted object? If you don't want to explain, you can treat this as my 4th question." Li Zixuan waved his hand and smiled. "No need, no need. Since you want to know why, then I'll explain it to you. It's not considered one of the 5 questions." His desire to rope Mo in was growing stronger and stronger. Therefore, he had changed the way he addressed himself. Although he was confident that he would win this bet, he had to give Mo some face and make him accept his loss wholeheartedly. This way, Mo would be willing to teach his students wholeheartedly in the future. This is not called cowardice, but the demeanor of a winner. Li Gang, on the other hand, frowned slightly. He secretly thought that Li Zixuan was a little careless. However, Mo was also his old friend. He couldn't possibly jump out to stop him at this time, right? Li Zixuan asked Shaoenren to bring a brush and ink, then gestured for Mo to come over. He drew the light path diagram of the small hole imaging system and said slowly, "Juzi, please look. This is a candle. The flame of the candle can be seen as composed of many small luminous dots. Each luminous dot emits light in all directions. There will always be a small beam of light that goes straight through the small hole, forming a small luminous spot behind the small hole. Therefore, each luminous dot on the candle flame will form a corresponding luminous spot on the white paper. All the luminous spots on the white paper will form the image of the candle flame on the white paper." After listening to Li Zixuan's explanation, Mo suddenly understood. Now, he finally knew how and why. However, at the same time, he looked at Li Zixuan very strangely, as if he was looking at a monster. At this moment, Mo Huai was very curious about Li Zixuan's background. First of all, to be able to become a martial arts master at the age of 14 or 15 was already a special case in the world. However, Li Zixuan actually had such deep attainments in these very obscure fields. He was a dual cultivator of both literature and martial arts, and he could reach an existence that ordinary people could not reach in every aspect. Mo Huai could not imagine what kind of family, what kind of master, could teach such a monster. How is it? I wonder if this kid is right? Li Zixuan's scalp tingled under Mo Huai's gaze, so he could not help but ask. Mo Huai nodded silently and did not say a word. Li Zixuan said, "Then, Juzi, please continue with the fourth question." When Mo Huai heard that, he shifted his gaze away from Li Zixuan and sighed deeply. Then, he bowed to Li Zixuan and cupped his hand. "There's no need for that. This old man admits defeat. From now on, this old man's old bones will be at your disposal. I don't ask for any remuneration, and I will do whatever you want." "Uncle." "No. Uncle. Don't." Mo Zhong and Mo Yun were shocked when they saw this, and they shouted one after another. As the Juzi of the Mo family, Mo Huai's knowledge and martial arts were all the role models that they, who adhered to the Mo school, worshipped and chased after since they were young. Now, the godlike man in their eyes actually bowed to a young man of 14 or 15 years old. How could they tolerate this? Although Li Zixuan was indeed very powerful, Mo Zhong and Mo Yun still could not accept this reality. "Shut up. As the Juzi of the Mo family, how can I go back on my words? Mo Zhong, Mo Yun, the two of you can leave first. In the future, this old man will choose the next Juzi of the Mo family." When Mo Huai heard that, he hurriedly reprimanded them loudly. Then, he cupped his hands to Li Zixuan and said, "Lord Li, please give this old man a month's time. After this old man returns to the Mo family's encampment and chooses the next Juzi, I will return to Chang, and to teach the students wholeheartedly." Now, Mo Huai's gentle pleading was no longer as high-spirited as he was at the beginning. Instead, he looked more like a hero at the end of his road. Li Gang looked at him and could not bear to see this. After all, this was an old friend he had known for many years. Thus, he said, "Brother Mo, you don't have to do this. Your position as a Juzi does not conflict with your identity as an instructor at Yanhuang College. Xiao Xian is not an unreasonable person. He will not restrict your freedom. You can manage the Mo family's affairs while teaching at Yanhuang College. Besides, the Mo family has declined to this day. How many affairs do you still need to manage?" The corner of Li Zixuan's mouth curled up. He secretly thought that his opportunity had come. He hurriedly interjected, "Mr. Li is right. Juzi, if you go to Yanhuang College to teach, this young man will definitely not restrict your freedom. Furthermore, this young man will definitely not shortchange your salary by a single cent. Also, Juzi, you can move the Mo family's encampment to Chang, and at that time, this young man will be in charge of settling all the followers of the Mo family. If there are any followers of the Mo family who are proficient in mechanics, optics, or machinery like you, this young man is also willing to hire them to Yanhuang College. As for the salary of the teachers at the college, I'm sure you already know about it, so this young man will not repeat it. What do you think?" Chapter 606. It had to be said that Li Zixuan's ambition was really big. He wanted to take in all the capable people in the Mo family under his command. Of course, he couldn't be blamed for this. Mo Huai's abilities, especially in astronomy, physics, and optics, made him the perfect candidate for Li Zixuan, who had just finished building Yanhuang College. With Mo Huai's addition, his workload at Yanhuang College would be greatly reduced. After Li Zixuan said that, Mo Zhong and Mo Yun's eyes flashed, and a glimmer of hope appeared on their faces. To put it nicely, they were the core disciples of the Mo family, but their work was no different from that of farmers. They also had to do farming on a regular basis. Otherwise, what would they eat? What would they drink? They would only return to the Mo family when they were not farming to accept the organization's training or other arrangements. They were all capable, but because of their identity as followers of the school of Mo, they had to stay in a desolate place and do hard work. Originally, it wouldn't have been a big deal if they continued like this, but after seeing the prosperity of Chang, and city with Mo Huai, their hearts wavered. The suffering of the followers of the school of Mo was something that the disciples of other sects could not understand. Now that Li Zishuan had said this, they could not help but let their imagination run wild. Why couldn't they rely on their own abilities to let their families live a good life? However, although that was what they thought, they wouldn't easily say it out loud. After years of being a follower of the school of Mo, the organization's discipline was deeply engraved in their hearts. Mo Huai frowned. He straightened his body and stared at Li Zishuan seriously. This old man appreciates Lord Li's good intentions. However, as a follower of the school of Mo, I have to wear fur as my clothes and sassafras as my clothes. I have to work day and night, and I have to suffer myself to the extreme. How can I be a follower of the school of Mo if I only covet worldly pleasures? This old man has already violated the school of Mo's laws by agreeing to become an instructor at Yanhuang College. In the future, I will no longer be qualified to lead the followers of the school of Mo in the world and carry forward the school of Mo. Therefore, this old man must resign from this position. As for the other followers of the school of Mo, I advise you not to waste your efforts. As soon as Mo Huai finished speaking, Mo Zhong and Mo Yun's faces instantly became 70% ashamed and 30% regretful. They lowered their heads and didn't say a word. Li Gang frowned and said, "Younger brother Mo, you're muddle-headed." The Mo clan had hundreds of thousands of disciples during the peak of the Preqin dynasty, but now there are less than 100 disciples. Have you not thought about the reason for this? Do you think that the decline of the school of Mo was only caused by the suppression of the various emperors? Mo Huai said indignantly, "Isn't that so? If it wasn't for the martial emperor dismissing the 100 schools of thought and respecting only Confucianism, how could the Mahist school have fallen to such a state?" When Li Gang heard this, he said rather painfully, "Ridiculous! I didn't expect Brother Mo to still be unable to see the true reason behind the decline of the Mo family. Fine, this old man will enlighten you. The onlooker sees more clearly than the person involved. Although this old man studies Confucianism, this old man will not help the Confucian school or your school of thought today. This old man will analyze with you as an outsider. You said that the decline of the Confucian school of thought was due to the suppression of the various emperors. However, ever since the martial emperor dismissed the 100 schools of thought and respected only Confucianism, why did the school of thought, which was known as a prominent school of thought in the world, decline so quickly while the school of thought and the school of thought could survive until now in the cracks of Confucianism? Have you ever thought about the reason behind this? Li Gang's words directly revealed the fundamental reason for the decline of the school of thought. Mo Huai could not help but be stunned, and his face turned pale. Li Zishuan listened seriously at the side. It was obvious that Li Gang knew more about these old matters than him. It was not bad to take this opportunity to learn. Li Gang did not wait for Mo Huai to reply and continued, "In my opinion, the reason why the school of thought fell to its current state is because your school of thought's requirements for your disciples are too harsh. Why can sage Confucius not be tired of eating and not be tired of eating, but you school of thought can only wear fur as clothes, wear silk as clothes, work day and night without rest, and suffer to the extreme? Perhaps this is because you have your own beliefs. But who says that people with beliefs can't rely on their own hands to live a good life? Could it be that living in the abyss of suffering every day makes you school of thought superior to the rest of the world?" It had to be said that Li Gang's words could be said to hit the nail on the head. Li Zishuan could not help but clap and cheer when he heard it. What he said made too much sense. Among the 100 schools of thought in the pre-Qin dynasty, the ones with the greatest influence were naturally the 4 schools of Confucianism, Moism, Taoism, and legalism. However, after the unification of the Qin and Han dynasties, their fates began to diverge. Confucianism became the orthodox and mainstream of Chinese culture. Legalism, due to its special nature, dominated the politics of the imperial court for 2,000 years. Taoism, on the other hand, recruited believers and occupied civil society, becoming the spiritual home of the secluded people. Only the school of Mo, after a moment of glory, disappeared into the long river of history, whether as a school of thought or as an organization. Why did the school of thought end up so tragically? Was the school of thought not brilliant enough? Definitely not. The school of thought was filled with great humanitarianism and scientific spirit. Even from the perspective of a modern person in the 21st century, it was still so dazzling. In addition to the external reason of dismissing the 100 schools of thought and respecting only Confucianism, there was also an internal reason for the demise of the school of thought. If a person wanted to be a loyal believer of the school of thought, he must have a strong spirit of sacrifice and dedication. He must have a heart of universal love for everyone, and he could not talk about personal feelings. Therefore, Zhuangzi of the world criticized the school of thought. His life is hard, his death is shallow, his Tao is great. He makes people worry, makes people sad, and his actions are difficult. I'm afraid that he can't be a saint and have the heart to rebel against the world. Although the school of thought alone, what can he do to the world? Apart from the world, he is also far away from the king. In contrast, being a disciple of Taoism was much better. The goal of Taoism was to become an immortal. This was a beautiful wish that could attract a large number of believers. Moreover, for Taoism, especially for Jingyi, which had a long history, there were not many rules about abstinence. Sexual intercourse was even a secret technique of the immortals. As a religion that was born, although Buddhism required abstinence, the monks could enjoy spiritual satisfaction while abstinence. Thus, they saw all suffering as a raft that led to happiness. It was because of this chicken soup for the soul that devout Buddhist disciples could ignore the physical hardship and pursue the metaphysical Zen. However, the school of thought's love with impartiality, non-aggression, respect for the virtuous, respect for the common, non-life, non-pleasure, frugality, and frugality in funerals. These ideas were not enough to be the foundation of the school of thought's belief. If it was not based on a firm belief, that bitter and abstinent life would not attract new blood to join the school of thought. The number of followers of the school of thought in the world would only decrease. This was the internal reason for the decline of the school of thought. Chapter 607. In the main hall, Li Zishuan saw that the time was right, so he stood up and said, "Juzi, the previous causes and effects are all gone, but they will also serve as a warning. If you don't want the Mo family to continue to decline, you have to make some changes. Didn't Moz establish the Mo family to use his talent in manufacturing to let the farmers in the world live a good life? Although the Mo family is declining now, Moz's knowledge must have been passed down. You are content to stay in a corner and forget Moz's original intention to save the world. In the long run, the only thing waiting for the Mo family is complete extinction." Back then, Moz called himself a humble man and was called a commoner. He used to be a doctor in the Song Kingdom and was a scholar with considerable cultural knowledge. He was also closer to the workers and farmers. He boasted that there was no ruler above, no farmer below. He was a scholar who sympathized with farmers and workers. Moz had once studied under a Confucian scholar and learned the skills of Confucius. He was called Yao Shun the Great and learned Confucian classics such as poems, books, spring and autumn. But later, He gradually became tired of the cumbersome etiquette of Confucianism and finally abandoned Confucianism to form his own school of thought. Before the rise of legalism, which represented the interests of the new landlord class, the Mo family was the largest school of thought in opposition to Confucianism in the pre-Qin dynasty. Han Fizi. Eminent learning recorded, the eminent learning of the world is Confucianism. Where Confucianism is, Confucius is. Where Mo is, Mod is. At this moment, Mo Huai sighed deeply and looked at Li Zixuan with a complicated expression. He said, after the divine ancestor passed away, the Mo family was divided into three factions: the Mo family of Xiangli, the Mo family of Xiangfu, and the Mo family of Dengling. The Xiangli family was led by the divine ancestor's chief disciple, Qin Liali. He had the Juzi's keepsake, the inky snow sword. Speaking of this, Mo Huai pulled out the inky sword at his waist and looked at the sword with a solemn and sad expression. He continued, the inky snow sword is inscribed on the world, and only the heart is unmoved. Since ancient times, the Mo family's Juzi has always held on to this belief even if they died in battle. As the 45th generation of the Mo family, it took me until today to recognize the root cause of the Mo family's decline. I deserve to die. I, Mo Huai, have let down the holy ancestor. After saying that, 2 drops of turbid tears fell from the corners of his eyes. Li Zixuan comforted him. Don't blame yourself, Juzi. It's never too late to mend the pen after the sheep is lost. Truth be told, the reason why I was able to answer all 3 of Juzi's questions was because my skills have a lot in common with the Mo family's Mo school. If you're willing to bring your school of Moism disciples to Yanhuang College to teach, then not only will we be able to discuss knowledge together, we'll also be able to bring engineering and Moism to greater heights, allowing the students to bring this knowledge to the people of Great Tang. Mo Huai was puzzled. Engineering? What is engineering? Li Zixuan asked with a smile. Juzi, didn't you read the previous editions of Tang Daily? Mo Huai said awkwardly, I've heard of it before, but I've never seen it for myself. It wasn't that he couldn't afford newspapers, but he felt that as the Mo family's Juzi, he had to set an example and stay away from those vulgar things that only entertain the masses. Mo Zhong and Mo Yun hung their heads dejectedly, feeling that their boss had embarrassed himself greatly. Li Zixuan didn't mind and explained patiently, engineering is the study of engineering. Its main purpose is to serve the needs of the people and improve their lives. Its ultimate goal is to achieve prosperity for all. Civilian houses, palace pavilions, river dams, imperial tombs, and agricultural production can all be supported by engineering. In short, engineering is only for the benefit of the people of the world, not for the fight between schools. Mo Huai was stunned and muttered, engineering is only for the benefit of the people of the world? How similar is this to the Moism's purpose? The Moism's purpose was for righteousness, while Mencius said it was for the benefit of the world. Zhuangzi, the world said it was for the sake of the world. The Moism gathered disciples to teach and practice. They were the main opposition of the Confucian school. Back then, in order to realize his ideas, Moz personally led his disciples to various countries so that the Moism could bring convenience and benefits to the people of the world. After a while, Mo Huai came back to his senses and said, Forgive me for being presumptuous, but Lord Zhu, you said that your engineering has many similarities with the Moism. Do you have any proof? Now that things had developed to this point, Mo Huai's attitude towards Li Zixuan had changed greatly. From the initial arrogance and contempt to the new respect after losing the bet, and now, after hearing that Li Zixuan had created his own engineering, he already regarded Li Zixuan as someone of the same generation. Since ancient times, a capable person, regardless of age, beauty, or ugliness, would be respected no matter where they went. Li Zixuan laughed and said, What's so difficult about that? "Mr. Li, can you let your servant go to my house and fetch 2 books?" Li Gang naturally agreed. After a while, a servant in Li Gang's house rode an old horse out of the back door and rushed to Yongla Lane. The people in the house were not idle either. After seeing that Li Gang had arranged for someone to fetch the books, Li Zishuan cupped his hands and said to Mo Huai, "Juzi, to be honest, I was very surprised by the 3 questions you raised just now. I originally thought that I was the only one who studied astronomy, mechanics, and engineering. I never thought that I would meet a like-minded person today. If it's convenient, can you tell me where the 3 questions came from?" There was no other reason. Li Zishuan asked this mainly because he wanted to confirm whether Mo Huai was a transmigrator or not. After all, the 3 questions Mo Huai asked just now were really shocking, and he could not help but be suspicious. Mo Huai heard this and said, "Those 3 questions were all recorded in the notes or books left behind by the Divine Ancestor. I originally thought that I only needed to use one of them to stump Lord Ju, but I never thought that Lord Ju would be so knowledgeable about these things at such a young age. I'm ashamed to say that as the Mo family's Juzi, I'm not as knowledgeable as you, Lord Ju. I can only guard the knowledge left behind by the Divine Ancestor and struggle at death's door." Sigh. Not only me, but none of the previous 43 Juzi could reach the Divine Ancestor's achievements. It was not easy for Mo Huai to have this kind of awareness. As he said, after Moz, there was no other great thinker in the Mo family, and there was no further improvement of the Mo family's thinking to maintain its vitality. They did not keep up with the times. As for the other schools of thought, after Confucius there was Mencius, Sunzi, Dong Zhongshu, and so on. After Laozi there was Zhuangzi, Luan, and so on. The legalists were even more valued by the ruling class. Especially at the beginning of the Western Han Dynasty, when the country was under great rule and the ruler needed good strategies to govern the country, Dong Zhongshu of the Confucian school offered the spring and autumn dew, and the 3 strategies for heaven and man. Luan of the Taoist school offered the Huainanzi. As for the Mo family, they did nothing in terms of academics and governance at that time. This was also one of the reasons why the Mo family was on the decline. Chapter 608. It's Moz. Li Zishuan was extremely shocked when he heard Mo Huai's reply. Since when was Moz? Qin Dynasty. It was more than 1,000 years since the Tang Dynasty, and more than 2,000 years since the modern era. Moz had already started researching astronomy, mechanics, and optics at such an early age. Li Zishuan suddenly had an extremely absurd thought. Could it be that Moz was also a transmigrator like me? And he was also an engineering student in his previous life? Alright, after this incident, Li Zishuan expressed that he would never underestimate the ancients again. Brother Mo, don't be too harsh on yourself. Moz was also a godlike figure back then. It's extremely difficult for future generations to surpass him. Let's not talk about surpassing him. It's already very difficult to carry forward the knowledge that he left behind. And Shaoxian's Yanwang College's content is somewhat similar to the Mo family's teachings. Brother Mo, why don't you take this opportunity to carry forward the Mo family's teachings and benefit the world? Li Gang couldn't help but console Mo Huai when he saw his dejected expression. However, as he spoke, he took the opportunity to advertise Yanwang College. As the saying goes, the older you get, the wiser you become. Although Li Zishuan concealed it well, how could Li Gang not see that Li Zishuan wanted to recruit Mo Huai? Li Gang admired Li Zishuan very much for this rather ambitious young man. Naturally, he would help him if he could. Mo Huai was silent for a while. He narrowed his eyes and didn't reply. No one knew what he was thinking, but Li Zishuan caught a fleeting glimpse of interest in Mo Huai's eyes. Thus, Li Zishuan struck while the iron was hot and said, "Juzi, You just said that although the Mo family's bloodline hasn't been cut off until today, the Mo family hasn't made any fundamental progress after so many years. In the long run, the Mo family will completely disappear. From the way I see it, if you want to bring the school of Mo to greater heights, you have to bring the remaining followers of the school of Mo out into the world. Any sect that was content to stay in a corner and build a cart behind closed doors would not be able to progress and develop. On the other hand, Yanhuang College is a place where the young talents of the Great Tang's 360 provinces and counties are gathered. This is the best opportunity for you to promote the Mo school. When Mo Huai heard that, he couldn't help but ask in confusion, didn't Lord Ju establish Yanhuang College to spread engineering? If I go and teach, aren't you afraid that your disciples will change their allegiance to the Mo family? Li Zishuan laughed and said, first of all, no matter if it's you or the other followers of the school of Mo, after being hired to teach at Yanhuang College, you only have one responsibility, and that is to teach the knowledge in the textbooks to the students of Yanhuang College. You only have one identity, and that is to be the teachers of Yanhuang College. In the college, there will no longer be a hierarchy between you. You will all be colleagues who will work together. I've said a long time ago that engineering will not compete with other schools. My purpose in spreading engineering is to benefit the people of the world. Therefore, in the future, Yanhuang College will be a very clean and pure place. There will be no fighting, no deception, and only the pursuit of truth and knowledge. During the teaching period, no activities unrelated to teaching are allowed. If there are students who are interested in the School of Mo and want to join the School of Mo after class, I, Li Zishuan, will not stop them in any way. Everyone has the freedom to choose. When Li Zishuan first had the idea of roping in Mo Huai, he was worried that this giant of the School of Mo would preach and steal his students after entering Yanhuang College. Later, when Li Gang dug up the past and analyzed the reasons for the rapid decline of the School of Mo, Li Zishuan's worries disappeared without a trace. He did not believe that the students of Yanhuang College would give up a good life and insist on becoming ascetic monks in the School of Mo. On the other hand, if Mo Huai brought the followers of the School of Mo to Yanhuang College, Li Zishuan felt that with the luxurious facilities and rich and friendly academic atmosphere of Yanhuang College, those followers of the School of Mo might be assimilated. Mo Huai did not know the evil plan in Li Zishuan's heart. When he heard these righteous and tolerant words, he praised, "Everyone has the freedom to choose. Lord Ju is so bold, this old man is ashamed. This old man believes that in the future, Yanhuang College will definitely become my Tang Empire's academic holy land. Master, this little one has brought back the books that Lord Li wanted." At this moment, Li Gang's servant came back riding an old horse. Li Gang nodded. Li Zishuan hurriedly went forward to take the two teaching materials. One was mathematics and the other was physics. He handed the two teaching materials to Mo Huai and said with a smile, "Giant, please take a look. These two books are the teaching materials that Yanhuang College will use. Of course, Yanhuang College's curriculum is definitely more than these two." Mo Huai did not dare to be careless at this time. He solemnly took the teaching materials with both hands, then excused himself to Li Zishuan and Li Gang. He could not wait to sit on the stool and start reading seriously. Li Zishuan and Li Gang smiled to show that they understood. Then, the two of them started chatting in low voices. On the other side, Mo Huai first opened the mathematics textbook. As a giant of the Mo family, he was quite proficient in mathematics. However, after getting used to the Arabic numerals with great difficulty, his eyes could not help but widen as he read. Algebra, equations, geometry, and so on. There were many new concepts defined in the textbook. Then, Mo Huai realized that many of the problems he had encountered before became very simple after using these things. What was even more unbelievable was that he seemed to have seen many of the concepts in the mathematics textbook before in the Mo family's classic. After flipping through another 10 pages, Moy put down the mathematics textbook and opened another physics textbook. Li Zixuan's physics textbook was very rich in content. It included a preliminary introduction to basic physics concepts such as motion, speed, sound, heat, light reflection, light refraction, and mechanics. There was also Newton's 3 laws. Ahem, of course, Li Zixuan shamelessly used his name here again. He called it Xiaoshuan's 3 laws. Unlike the mathematics textbook, Moy flipped through the physics textbook very quickly. In less than half an hour, he had flipped through more than half of the physics textbook. Then, he closed the book and put it away. He took a few deep breaths, then suddenly stood up and went to Li Zixuan. He bowed and said excitedly, "Thank you for your help." The 45th generation of the Mo family's giant, Moy, pays his respects to the divine ancestor. Li Zixuan, who was still wondering why Moy would bow to him, felt that it was ridiculous when he heard Moy's words. He stomped his feet and said, "Divine ancestor? How can I be your divine ancestor? Are you all right, giant?" Chapter 609. In the main hall, Li Gang, who was sitting on the couch, was so shocked that he almost pulled his beard off when he saw this absurd scene. Mo Zhong and Mo Yun, who were supposed to be guarding Moy, saw that their boss actually bowed to Li Zixuan and even called him divine ancestor. Both of them looked as if they had seen a ghost. As disciples of the Mo family, no one knew better than them what the 2 words, divine ancestor, meant. In the Mo family, the giant was called a saint, and there was only one person who could be called the divine ancestor since ancient times. The founder of the Mo family, Moz. As the giant of the Mo family, would Moy use the 2 words, divine ancestor, as a joke to others? Obviously not. Even if he died, it was impossible. But how was he going to explain the current situation? At this moment, Mo Zhong and Mo Yun were completely dumbfounded. Moy did not let everyone wait for long. He said firmly, "You are the reincarnation of the divine ancestor. You are the Mo family's divine ancestor." Li Zixuan was speechless. Reincarnation? Juzi, did you make a mistake? You believe in something as non-existent as reincarnation? Actually, he was more certain than anyone that he was not the reincarnation of Moz because the soul in his body had transmigrated from the modern world and had nothing to do with Moz. Yes, Brother Mo, reincarnation only exists in supernatural novels. There is no such thing as reincarnation in reality. Brother Mo, are you too tired? Why don't you go back and rest first? Li Gang could not help but frown and interrupt. If it wasn't for the fact that he knew Moy well, if it were someone else like Moy, he would definitely think that this person was crazy. No. Brother Wenji, I am very clear-headed. I know that no one will believe in the existence of reincarnation. I didn't believe it at first either. However, after reading those 2 books, I am convinced that Serene is the reincarnation of the Mo family's divine ancestor. Moy first shook his head and declined Li Gang's good intentions. Then, he began to analyze. For example, in this book of arithmetic, the multiple, midpoint, circle, decimal system, and so on are basic concepts that I have seen in the divine ancestor's handwritten note. 1,000 years ago, the divine ancestor proposed these concepts. What shocked me the most was that the things recorded in this book of arithmetic were actually more detailed than the divine ancestor's handwritten notes. Also, this physics textbook covers the concepts of motion, speed, sound, heat, reflection of light, refraction of light, mechanics, and so on. I've read all of these things in the sacred ancestor's note. Moreover, this physics textbook's research on these problems is obviously more in-depth. Back then, the divine ancestor was a genius and spent his entire life to have some attainments in these aspects. However, Li Xian'an, you are so young, but you can study these aspects more thoroughly than the divine ancestor. Other than the fact that you are the reincarnation of the divine ancestor and are born with the will of heaven, I really can't think of any other reason. Li Zishuan was dumbfounded. It turned out that Moz had studied the concepts written in his book before. He had to admit that Moz's interests and hobbies were really broad. His understanding of the world had been refreshed once again. However, did he count as being unjustly implicated? In fact, what Mo Hui said was not nonsense. In history, Moz was the first scientist in China's history to treat mathematical problems from a rational perspective. He gave a series of propositions and definitions of mathematical concepts. These propositions and definitions were highly abstract and rigorous. Secondly, Moz's research on physics involved the branches of mechanics, optics, acoustics, and so on. He gave many definitions of physics concepts and made many important discoveries, summarizing some important physics theorems. These included the principle of leverage, small hole imaging, light and shadow, as well as the imaging characteristics of flat, concave, and convex mirrors. Lastly, Moz himself was also an expert in mechanical manufacturing. He once spent 3 years to meticulously develop a type of wooden bird, kite, that could fly. He was also an expert at manufacturing vehicles. He could build a vehicle that could carry 30 tons in less than a day. Combined with the new horse carriage that was popular in Chang'an City, Don't Touch Me, and the crane that had just appeared recently, Mo Hui was even more certain that Li Zishuan was the reincarnation of Moz. Juzi, this kid really isn't the reincarnation of your divine ancestor. The knowledge recorded in these 2 books were all taught to me by my master, spiritual master Ling Su, when he was still alive. I call them all the knowledge. The reason I set up Yanwang Academy is to spread my master's knowledge to the world. Li Zishuan rubbed between his eyebrows and explained helplessly. Li Zishuan felt a little uncomfortable being the reincarnation of someone else's divine ancestor for no reason. Although this divine ancestor used to be a very awesome existence, this had nothing to do with him. He just wanted to be himself. Mo Hui said in disbelief. Impossible. Other than the divine ancestor, who else in the world could have such deep attainments in these aspects? Li Zishuan spread out his hands and said, You haven't seen it, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. Moreover, my abilities came from my master. There's probably no one in the Great Tang who doesn't know about this, right? Wake up. I'm definitely not the reincarnation of your divine ancestor. Li Gang also nodded and said, Brother Mo, although there are many coincidences in this matter, Xiao Xian's abilities are also open and aboveboard. He definitely isn't the reincarnation of the Mo family's divine ancestor. Hearing Li Gang's words, Mo Hui finally wavered a little. His face was filled with disappointment as he muttered, Is it really not? Li Zishuan couldn't help but feel a little sympathy for this old man's disappointed look. He thought for a moment and said, Juzi, I know what you're thinking. You're hoping that there really is the reincarnation of the Mo family's divine ancestor and then lead the Mo family to become strong again. But it's better to rely on yourself than on others. The spread of the Mo school still depends on you and the current followers of the Mo family. Mo Hui was stunned. Li Zishuan's words stabbed him in the heart. He did have such thoughts before. After a while, he cupped his hands and bowed to Li Zishuan. Thank you for your advice, Lord Li Zishuan. I've made up my mind. I'll issue an order for all followers of the Mo family to come to Chang and help Lord Zhu impart knowledge and enlighten the people. When Mo Zhong and Mo Yun heard Mo Hui's words, they couldn't help but look at each other. It seemed like they were happy with this result. Li Zishuan was overjoyed. He said excitedly, That's great, that's great. Juzi, welcome to Yanhuang College. When the rest of the followers of the Mo family arrive in Chang'an, just let me know and I'll take care of them. Chapter 610. Little Xian, although the Mo family's Juzi has agreed to lead the rest of the Mo family into Yanhuang College, you mustn't reveal their identities to others. Moreover, many of these followers of the school of Mo are skilled in martial arts. You must pay attention to management and don't let these people go out and cause trouble. You must know that there are many people watching you now. After Mo Huai, Mo Zhong, and Mo Yun left with their mission, Li Gang looked at Li Zixuan and said earnestly. Li Zixuan was stunned. He didn't understand, so he asked, "Sir, why is that? Do you know why the emperors of the past have been suppressing the Mo family ever since the Qin Dynasty unified the world?" Li Gang clasped his hands behind his back and sighed deeply. Then, he turned around and stared into Li Zixuan's eyes with a burning gaze. Li Zixuan answered matter-of-factly, "Isn't it because Confucianism can better govern the people? That's why the other schools of thought can only slowly die out." This question was something that any modern person could answer, because countless historians had analyzed this problem. For the feudal rulers, Confucianism, which centered on the benevolence of hierarchy, was more suited to the needs of the ancient emperors to implement feudal autocracy. Therefore, when Confucianism became popular, other schools of thought would naturally die out. "You brat!" Li Gang glared and pointed at Li Zixuan. He was old and experienced, so of course he knew that Li Zixuan was speaking the truth. However, how could the truth be said so casually? He scolded jokingly, then said, "You can talk nonsense in front of me, but don't say these words outside." Li Zixuan knew that he had misspoken and hurriedly agreed. Li Gang shook his head and continued. "Actually, other than Confucianism, there's another important reason why the emperors of the past suppressed the Mo family. Under the background of great unification, a strong organization with strict internal discipline would inevitably make the imperial court extremely wary. Although the Mo family may only be hot-blooded and have no political ambitions, the emperors of the past were not afraid of greedy villains, but sages with the ability to mobilize people. For example, Shao He. When Emperor Gaozu of Han stabilized the country, Shao He's right-hand man advised him to buy more land and dirty himself. Only then would he feel at ease. Shao He listened to the advice and forced the commoners to buy their houses and land at a low price. As expected, Emperor Gaozu was very happy. If Prime Minister Shao wanted to benefit the world like Moz, there might be another headless ghost in the Weiyang Palace. Therefore, after the first emperor, he immediately sent the secret shadow guards to kill the Mo family. In the Han Dynasty, the imperial court suppressed the Mo family several times and almost wiped out the entire Mo family. Although these people are Xian, you still have to avoid suspicion to avoid to our eyes to Li's. Don't give, you still avoid Araroff, you don't Araroff, you don, you, they, you to avoid Araroff to avoid. Li Gang's words were not wrong. To a ruler, the most terrifying thing was not the ambition to rebel, but the ability to rebel. Therefore, as an organization, the Mo family could only exist in the era of the various kingdoms. At that time, there was no unification of the four kingdoms. The greatest danger that the rulers of the various kingdoms faced was the enemy countries around them. Therefore, they were much more relaxed towards the commoners under their rule. Once the 6 kings are gone, the 4 kingdoms are one, the ruler would definitely treat his subjects as his enemy. Not only would organizations like the Mo family not be able to continue existing, even those who inherited some of the Mo family's ideas and took the responsibility of eliminating violence and protecting the common people would not be tolerated by the imperial court because of using martial arts to violate the law. Li Zixuan stood to the side. As he listened, he couldn't help but think of that turbulent and bloody era. He couldn't help but feel sad that such a great school of thought like the School of Mo was born in this terrible era. After a long silence, he solemnly cupped his hands towards Li Gang and said, "Thank you for your reminder, I will be careful." He knew in his heart that if Li Gang didn't really treat him as a junior, he definitely wouldn't have said these words. Li Gang shook his head. It was obvious that he also felt pity for the Mo family's ending. At this time, he looked at the green bamboo at the corner of the door and said with a sigh, "The Mo family's motto is, words spoken by mouth must be carried out by body. The Mo family has many brave warriors, and every member of the Mo family is willing to go through fire and tread on blades without hesitation. This kind of dedication is valuable, but it can easily be expressed as a collective action, which is not beneficial to the long-term development of the school. In the past, when the Mo family's great son Mengsheng was appointed as the Lord of Yang City in the Chu Kingdom, he and his 183 disciples all died in battle. In the chaotic times at that time, such an incident was definitely not the only case for the Mo family. Although the Mo family had hundreds of thousands of disciples at its peak, no matter how many disciples there were, how many times could they withstand such a great battle? Therefore, this old man believes that the Mo family's bravery and ruthlessness are not desirable. Today, Yanwang College is a good place for them to go. This old man hopes that they can peacefully teach and educate people in the college, and don't cause any more trouble. With lofty ideals as the goal, a strict organization as the norm, and a willingness to sacrifice themselves for their ideals, this was the overall characteristic of the Mo family. When they participated in social change and practice in a collective and group way, they could demonstrate an extremely powerful force. However, the tragic result could also happen. When this group of people suffered a strong blow, with their dedication to justice and ideals, with their spirit that would rather die than retreat, the result would not only be a collapse, but also a complete wipeout. If the group collapsed, it could still be dealt with, but a wipeout would be impossible to continue. Forget it. Forget it. Let's not talk about these old things. It's getting late, and I know that you're very particular about your food. This old man only has coarse bran and pickles at home, so I won't keep you here to eat, lest you dislike it. After a long time, perhaps Li Gang realized that these topics were too serious, so he stood up and looked at the time, half joking. Li Zishuan blushed with shame and said, "Sir, what are you saying? I'm not a spoiled rich young master who can't bear hardships. Back then, my master and I ate wild vegetables in the mountains. To be able to eat at the same table as you, even if it's coarse bran and pickles." Li Gang waved his hand in annoyance and said, "Go, go, go. This old man didn't cook for you. Go home and eat by yourself. Oh, right, in 2 days, 2 of my good friends will be coming to Chang, and you should come and meet them." Li Zishuan was still gloomy at first, but when he heard the second half of the sentence, his eyes suddenly lit up, and he hurriedly asked, "Sir, your 2 good friends are?" "You'll know in 2 days, but you don't have to worry, they're just like me, easygoing people. I'm sure they'll be willing to stay at your college." Chapter 611. Prince of Wei's Mansion, Literature Hall. "Scholar Xiao, are you done with the proofreading?" Li Tai came in from outside and walked around the people around him. He went straight to Xiao Dian's desk and asked expectantly. Looking at Xiao Dian again, his hair was disheveled, his face was haggard, and he had 2 large dark circles under his eyes. He looked like a devil that had just come out of hell. Where was the gentleness from a few days ago? When he heard Li Tai's question, he replied without raising his head, "Soon, soon. Your Highness, please wait a moment. The last proofreading is about to be completed." When Li Tai heard this, he nodded in relief and did not rush him. This was because he knew that the people in the literature hall were already working to their limit. Therefore, he acknowledged and sat by the side to wait for the result. After about an hour, Xiao Dian slammed his brush on the inkstone and laughed loudly. Ha. The proofreading is complete. There are no mistakes. The book is done. It's finally done. Li Tai, who was lying on the desk and flipping through the manuscripts in boredom, suddenly quivered. He ran to Xiao Dian's side and said happily, "Scholar Xiao, are you done with the proofreading?" Xiao Dian nodded excitedly and said, "I'm done with the proofreading. Your Highness, after 7 days of hard work by the 13 of us, this geography textbook is finally done." Xie Yan could not help but say excitedly, "Unbelievable! It's really unbelievable!" Although Li Xianan had already completed most of the geography textbook, even the remaining content added up to quite a lot of work. "I didn't expect that we only used 7 days to complete it," Li Tai said warmly. "This is all thanks to all of you scholars who worked hard these few days. After this prince hands this book to Mr. Li, this prince will personally enter the palace to request for credit for all of you." Although Xiao Dian looked extremely tired, he could not help but laugh when he heard this. "Ha. Your Highness is too serious. Even if I don't make any contributions, I, Xiao Dian, am still extremely happy to be able to participate in the writing of such a peerless book." Xie Yan smiled and said, "Dian is right. This geography book will definitely become a masterpiece that will be handed down from generation to generation. At that time, we might even be able to leave our names in history because of it. We are still basking in the glory of Your Highness and Li Xianan." "That's right. That's right." The rest of the scholars agreed with him. When little Fatty heard the praises around him, he couldn't help but feel a little proud. He secretly thought that he had the best foresight back then. He was the first one who thought highly of Li Zishuan. After everyone had quieted down, Li Tai said to them, "No matter what, you have been busy these past few days. You have stayed up many nights because of this. Now please go and rest. This prince will return the revised textbook of geography to the teacher." With that, he reached out his hand, ready to pick up the book on the table and go to Yongla Lane to find Li Zishuan. In the end, he actually couldn't pick it up? Li Tai took a closer look. Turned out that there were 4 more hands on the book. He looked at the owners of the 4 hands again. It was Xiao Dian and Xie Yan. He couldn't help but wonder, "Scholars, what do you mean by this?" Cough, cough. Xiao Dian coughed dryly and said embarrassedly, "Your Highness, please forgive me. The content of this geography book is really too brilliant. I am a little reluctant to part with it and would like to borrow it for a few days to make a copy for my collection. May I know if it's possible?" Xie Yan looked at Li Tai and nodded, indicating that he also had the same intention. The rest of the people came back to their senses and couldn't help but whisper behind them. They were eager to try. Li Tai suddenly felt a lot of pressure. Logically speaking, these people had put in so much effort to perfect this book. Therefore, lending the book to them to make a copy for their collection was not an unreasonable request at all. However, Yanwang College couldn't wait. After thinking about it, Li Tai tactfully refused. "Scholars, you must also know that Yanwang College will start school on the 18th of this month. At that time, we will need a lot of teaching materials, so we have to print them in advance. Therefore, this revised book must be sent to Mr. Li as soon as possible. If you too want to keep a copy for your collection, this prince will get the workshop to print a few more copies. When the time comes, I will give each of you a copy. How about that?" Those who could get along with Li Tai for so long were definitely not the kind of people who were one-track-minded. Xiao Dian nodded and said, "Your Highness is right. This way we can save a lot of effort." Xie Yan said, That's right. We have to thank Your Highness for giving us the book." "Thank you, Your Highness." In the afternoon, Li Tai brought the revised geography teaching materials to the Li residence. Li Zishuan, who was taking an afternoon nap in the west courtyard, got up and went to the front hall after hearing the report. "What? Could it be that the geography teaching materials on your side have been revised?" Li Zishuan asked as he looked at little Fatty, who was drinking fine wine and eating fresh fruits in the front hall. It was not because he could count, but because there was an extra book on the corner of the table. Looking at the thickness of the book, it should be the geography, teaching materials that he gave to Li Tai the last time. Yes, yes. Li Tai excitedly chewed the fruit in his mouth and swallowed it. Then, he said excitedly, I finished the revision yesterday afternoon. After that, all the scholars in the academy did not rest and spent the whole night proofreading this book. It was almost noon today when they confirmed that there were no mistakes in it. After that, I personally sent it to you. Li Zishuan could not help but nod and say, yes, not bad, not bad. They have all worked hard. How about this, in my own name, I will give each of the scholars who participated in the revision of this book 30 strings of cash, as a reward for their hard work. Later, Qinke, help me pass it to them. Yes. Li Tai nodded. He also understood that 30 strings of cash was not a small amount. Then, he caught a glimpse of Li Zishuan sitting at the side and yawning. He immediately said unhappily, Hey, little Xian, did you just wake up? You're really not embarrassed? All of us over there have not slept properly for 7 days because of this book. You, on the other hand, are hiding at home alone. You're really relaxed and comfortable. Li Zishuan said unhappily, which eye of yours saw that I was relaxed and comfortable? All of you were busy these 7 days. Did you think I was idle these 7 days? Didn't I finish the 4th textbook in these 7 days? Li Tai suddenly choked and was speechless. However, after hearing that there was another textbook, he could not help but ask curiously, the 4th textbook? What's it about? Can you lend it to me? Other than mathematics and geography, he did not know anything about the other 2 books. Of course, he was curious. Li Zishuan shook his head and said, No, now that the 4 books are done, I have to get the workshop to hurry up and print them. If you want to read them, you have to wait until school starts. Chapter 612. Master of the Emo Clan? Junxian, are you sure? It was the middle of the night, but the Du Hall was still brightly lit. Li Er leaned back on his couch and stared at Li Junxian as he sternly asked. Li Junxian was dressed in a white robe, his face solemn. He clasped his fist and replied, replying to your majesty, this general is extremely certain that this person is the master of the Emo clan. A few years ago, this general personally saw him in Qingzhou. Moreover, the files of the 100 Horsemen Department have detailed records of the master of the Emo clan, so there is no doubt that this person is the master of the Emo clan. Li Er nodded, his eyes narrowed in thought. Li Junxian probed, Your Majesty, should we arrest them? Arrest? Why should we arrest them? Li Er raised his eyebrows and looked at Li Junxian. Firstly, these people did not cheat or rob. Secondly, why should we arrest them? Do we have to arrest them just because they are members of the Emo clan, the sworn enemy of the Confucian school? Li Junxian pursed his lips, hesitating to speak. Li Er seemed to know what Li Junxian wanted to say and chuckled. We understand your intentions. But how can the current Emo clan be compared to the Emo clan of the past? We do not deny that Mod was an important figure, but how much ability can the current master of the Emo clan have compared to him? The people he is leading are just a bunch of stubborn disciples of the Emo clan. They can't cause any waves. Speaking up to this point, Li Er suddenly looked towards the north and sighed deeply. He recalled, in the past, the 42nd generation of the Mo family had interacted with my ancestor. Although they were not on the same side, she was still considered a heroine of her generation and was worthy of respect. The Mahist sect has many heroic and righteous people, and they are skilled in engineering. It must have been difficult for Li Zishuan to find their master. This time, Yanwang College will be lively. Li Ying, the 42nd generation great son of the Mo clan, was the first female great son of the Mo clan. She was the daughter of the previous generation's great son, Emochin. She was born during the Northern and Southern dynasties, and was one of the valiant generals of the Southern dynasties. She had fought with the Northern Wei dynasty many times, and had even fought with the Urju clan. She had also fought with the Li's second great ancestor, Li Hu's father, Li Yun, and defeated the Urju clan. Li Junxian responded with silence. Although he had learned about these matters from the files of the 100 Horsemen Department, this matter concerned the imperial household, so he had no choice but to be cautious. After Li Er sighed, he walked a few steps with his hands behind his back and instructed, "Send someone to pass a message to Li Zishuan. Tell him that he can accept people from Ma's sect, but you have to be careful. If something happens, you'll have to bear the consequences." Li Junxian blushed with shame. It wasn't that he had never delivered an imperial decree for Li Zishuan, but an imperial decree in this tone could only be heard when delivered to Li Zishuan. This was a testament to just how much the emperor favored Li Zishuan. "Yes, Your Majesty." Although many strange thoughts were popping up in his mind, Li Junxian didn't hesitate to respond, clasping his fists and bowing. Li Er nodded and returned to his throne. Just when Li Junxian thought that there was nothing else for him to do, and was about to leave, Li Er suddenly said, "That's right, Junxian, you should also work harder on your martial arts. Dugu Xian broke into the Grandmaster realm several days ago, and logically speaking, your talent shouldn't be any worse than his. Yet you're still stuck at the Qi transformation realm. This truly shouldn't have happened." Li Junxian panicked and immediately bowed. "This general has sinned. I have disappointed Your Majesty." Li Er shook his head and softly said, "We don't blame you for anything. We just want to say that while the position of 100 Horseman officer often relies on one's brain, there are also times when one needs martial arts. Only if you can reach the Grandmaster realm, as soon as possible will we be able to give you more tasks. However, the path of martial arts is often dependent on luck and fortune. There's no need for you to force yourself." Li Junxian fell into thought, and after a few moments, he clasped his fists and said, "This general understands. Thank you for Your Majesty's grace." Luck and fortune? It's said that Dugu Xian's luck came from a sword style that Li Zishuan unintentionally created. Then where is my luck? After leaving the palace, Li Junxian looked up at the bright moon in the sky and sighed. He had known long ago that Dugu Xian had broken into the Grandmaster realm, and he had also understood the various details. While he envied Dugu Xian's good fortune, Li Junxian also felt a great pressure. He and Dugu Xian were both outstanding talents of the great Tang's younger generation. After Li Er ascended to the throne, the two of them had served at Li Er's side, one in the light and one in the shadows. They were both good partners and potential rivals. Just as a matter of fact, Li Er had used Dugu Xian to compete with him tonight. Although Li Er might not have had such intentions, it was said that with great power came great responsibility. If Li Junxian wanted to stabilize his position, he had to do both his duty and break through as quickly as possible. However, it was extremely difficult to break through to the Grandmaster realm. In the world, there were thousands of Qi transformation realm martial artists, but only a few dozen Grandmaster realm martial artists. This proved the value of Grandmaster realm martial artists. Li Junxian had been born into a poor family, and he did not have Dugu Xian's profound family background. In his early years, he had served under Li Mi and later became Wang Shichong's general. But because he loathed Wang Shichong's conduct, he had led his men to defect to Li Yuan and was made a light carriage commandant. He had followed Li Er to the Central Plains. During the battle, he rode out alone, charging and breaking through enemy lines, fighting bravely. In the third year of Wuda, Li Junxian had followed Li Er to defeat Song Jingang in Jieshio. He had been made the general of agile cavalry and given palace servants and silk. In the fourth year of Wuda, Li Junxian had gone to Luoyang to attack Wang Shichong and was made the deputy commander of the cavalry. Wang Shichong's son, Wang Xianying, had transported grain into Luoyang from martial prison. Li Junxian had captured his army, and Wang Xianying had fled. He had followed the army to defeat Dou Jianda and Lu Haida. After Li Er ascended the throne, he had been made the Left Guard Residence's assistant commander. In the 8th month of the 9th year of Wuda, the great Tang Dynasty, which had just undergone a coup less than a month ago, had been invaded by the Turks. At that time, the Turks had attacked Jingyang, which was only 40 li away from Chang'an, and the capital had been shaken. Li Junxian and Yuqi Jingda had been ordered to meet the enemy and resolve the crisis in Chang'an. Li Er sighed, "Junxian is so valiant. What is there to worry about?" He had been made the general of the Left Guard, in charge of the Xuanwu Gates Guards, and had been made the County Duke of Wulyan. Li Junxian had been very diligent in his work during the war, and he had often been rewarded by Li Er. This year, Li Er had formed the 100 Cavalry, and the brave and intelligent Li Junxian had been made the commander of the 100 Cavalry Department. It could be said that he had been blessed by the Emperor for a long time. Sigh. I can only take one step at a time. Nothing can be forced. Let the heavens decide everything. Li Junxian shook his head and sighed. Then, he mounted his horse and rode off into the distance. However, he was not the only one who was troubled by the martial Dao. Chapter 6:13. Your Majesty! Your Majesty! Bad news. Butler Zhao, he. Not long after his conversation with Li Junxian, Li Er was preparing to leave Ganlu Palace to rest in the rear palace when a young eunuch came running over, shouting at him as he ran. Li Er stopped in his tracks, looked at the young eunuch, and asked in a deep voice, "Zhao Song? What happened to him?" The eunuch panted and quickly replied, "Your Majesty, Eunuch Zhao he seems to have gone berserk due to improper training. Right now, his room is like a furnace and no one dares to go near it." Li Er was shocked and said, "There's such a thing? Quickly summon Wang Jian and Wang Gang to the Minister of Internal Affairs." If something had happened to other eunuchs, Li Er would not be so concerned. But Zhao Song was different. Putting aside his martial arts, Zhao Song was an old man by his side. He had been by his side ever since he was still the king of Qin. It had been almost 5 to 6 years. It was said that the emperor was heartless, but that also depended on the person and the time. Right now, Li Er was not willing to see something happen to Zhao Song. "Yes, Your Majesty." The eunuch had the ability to observe people's expressions. He could see Li Er's anxiety and quickly bowed in response before going to pass on the decree. Li Er frowned and ordered the eunuch beside him, "Prepare the carriage for the Minister of Internal Affairs." In the west of the palace there was a short building complex. That was the Yetting Palace. It was where the palace maids and the family members of the officials who committed crimes lived. To the north of the Yetting Palace was Taitsong, and to the south was the Minister of Internal Affairs, where all the eunuchs lived. When Li Er hurried over from Taiji Palace, the 2 eunuchs he summoned were already there. They were middle-aged men in their 40s and 50s and wore loose white robes. They had an elegant demeanor and stood out from the crowd. When the 2 of them saw Li Er, they quickly walked over and bowed, "Greetings, Your Majesty." Although the 2 of them were highly skilled in martial arts, but no matter how powerful they were, they could not surpass the secular imperial power. Especially in the face of Li Er, this powerful and iron-blooded emperor, they did not dare to have a trace of neglect. Li Er nodded and asked directly, "How is Zhao Song now? Why don't the 2 of you go in and help?" One of the men with slightly darker skin cupped his hands and smiled bitterly. "Your Majesty, before you came, the 2 of us had already checked on Steward Zhao's situation. It's not that we don't want to help, it's just that our abilities are limited and we can't help." Li Er was shocked when he heard that. he said in surprise. Even the two of you can't help? The other consecrator shook his head helplessly and said, Your Majesty, Head Steward Zhao's martial cultivation is already slightly higher than both of us. Now that the vital energy in his body is rampaging wildly, if we want to use external forces to help, we must find a martial arts expert who can completely suppress the vital energy in Head Steward Zhao's body. However, only a great grandmaster can do this. With the strength of both of us, if we rashly intervene, we will only harm Head Steward Zhao. The only thing we can do now is to see if Manager Zhao can make it through. Great Grandmaster? When Li Er heard that, he couldn't help but frown deeper. There were only 3 recognized Great Grandmaster experts in the world: Spiritual Master Ling Su of the Celestial Master Sect of Longhu Mountain, Abbot Xian Kong of the Shaolin Temple, and Tujua Nation Master Wu Jie. Now, one of the 2 great grandmasters in the Central Plains was gone, leaving only Abbot Xian Kong of the Shaolin Temple. If Li Er gave an order, Xian Kong would definitely do him a favor. However, was there really enough time? Li Er, who sat on the world and had hundreds of thousands of soldiers in his hands, was at a loss at this moment. Wang Jian. Zhao Song was fine before. How did he suddenly become like this? After thinking for a while, Li Er frowned and asked. The 2 consecrators of the imperial family looked at each other. Finally, the slightly darker and older consecrator stepped forward and cupped his hands. Your Majesty, Manager Zhao's meridians are full of genuine qi. At first glance, it seems to be a sign of a breakthrough. However, the total amount of genuine qi in Manager Zhao's body is definitely not enough for him to break through to the Great Grandmaster realm. After thinking about it, I feel that the violent genuine qi in Manager Zhao's body seems to have been formed after being forcibly compressed before suddenly going out of control. Li Er was stunned. He suddenly remembered the lie Li Zishuan told in the imperial court after he destroyed the 7 cultivators of virtue sect. Seeing Li Er's gloomy face, Wang Jian thought that he had said something wrong and hurriedly said, Your Majesty, it was just my humble opinion. I don't think Manager Zhao would do such a thing without common sense. Li Er's face darkened and he said in a deep voice, No, you're right. Zhao Song really did do such a thing without common sense. Previously, Li Zishuan mentioned the genuine qi bomb in the imperial court and told a big lie to deceive everyone. Later, only the 2 of them knew about the gunpowder. Zhao Song didn't know about it, which led to the current situation. Li Er was really anxious and annoyed now. Wang Jian and Wang Gang were dumbfounded. They never thought that this unreliable guess would become the truth. I'll go in and take a look. Li Er thought for a while and was about to enter the house. Wang Jian was shocked and hurriedly stopped him. Your Majesty, you can't. Manager Zhao is not conscious at the moment and his genuine qi is still in a violent state. It's very likely that he will accidentally hurt Your Majesty. Besides, this house is very hot at the moment. Your Majesty shouldn't go in. Your Majesty's body is priceless. Please think twice. The accompanying eunuchs and maids stopped him in unison. Li Er was helpless. He sighed and said, Then you 2 stay here and take good care of him. You must protect Zhao Song's life. When he wakes up, inform me as soon as possible. Wang Jian and Wang Gang naturally cupped their hands and said yes. Qin Mansion. Although it was late at night, it was still brightly lit. Zhuangqi, why hasn't Master come out yet? He's been in there for almost a day. Outside a house in the backyard of Qin Mansion, a group of anxious people gathered. There was Madame Qin Huayu, and the maids, servants, and guards in the mansion. At this moment, Madame Qin glanced at the tightly shut door and asked the burly man beside her with a worried expression. Zhuangqi was not sure himself, but he still forced himself to be calm and said, Madame Qin, don't worry. Master's body has been getting better day by day for the past few months. Ever since he started practicing Tai Chi, his old injuries have been recovering faster and faster. It must be a good thing that he suddenly went into seclusion today. Who knows, maybe Master will be able to recover to his peak strength this time. Madame Qin wiped the sweat on her forehead and sighed. I only hope that Master can be healthy. As for the strength of his martial arts, I don't care about it. At this moment, Qin Huayu came over and patted Madame Qin's shoulder, comforting her. Mother, Father will be fine. Go back to your room and rest. I'll stay here and guard. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.